right, so today we're going to have first a talk on Bhagavad-gītā.
El día de hoy, primero vamos a tener una plática acerca del Bhagavad-gītā.
And we'll begin by reading the part of the introduction, not part of the, yes, it's part of the introduction, which gives you some history of what is this book, Bhagavad-gītā.
Vamos a leer una parte de la introducción que es la historia del Bhagavad-gītā para darnos una idea de lo que es.
So we'll read that back and forth. Giri Maharaj will read the English one paragraph at a time. I can also read the Spanish one paragraph at a time.
Vamos a leer un párrafo y un párrafo en inglés y en español.
So I'll say a few things in the beginning. Huh?
Me gustaría decir algunas cosas al principio.
It would be safe to say the oldest spiritual practice in the world is yoga. I forget his name.
Julián.
Julián, welcome.
Bienvenido.
Bienvenido. Please come in and if you need a chair, you can pull up a white chair or you can sit right here on the floor.
Hola.
This is the man with the magic dog.
Es el hombre con perro mágico.
His dog found me, and then we found him. And it ends up, some of us were old friends from the past. Anyway, it's another story. Okay, so back to Bhagavad-gītā. Okay. It's safe to say that yoga is the oldest spiritual practice, not just in this world, in the universe.
Que el yoga es una de las prácticas, es la práctica más antigua en todo el universo.
And it is also safe to say that the most important book in the practice of yoga, and there are many different systems of yoga, and they've evolved and developed over the, not centuries, but over the tens of thousands of years. And those include important books like the Upanishads.
Que hay muchos sistemas de yoga y libros que no solo se remontan a cientos de años, sino a 10,000 años de antigüedad. Y hay algunos libros que se llaman los Upanishads.
The Yoga Sutras by Patanjali.
Yoga Sutras por Patanjali.
And the Bhagavad-gītā.
Y el Bhagavad-gītā.
And of these three groups of books and groups of books, the Bhagavad-gītā is the outstanding, most important book for yoga practice.
Y dentro de esos libros, el Bhagavad-gītā es uno de los más importantes y sobresalientes libros para yoga.
It's often called the handbook of yoga.
Es
the
como,
handbook, or the Bible of yoga.
Es como la Biblia del yoga, se le podría llamar así.
Don't like that word. But it means the most essential book.
Pero se refiere a que es el libro más esencial.
So now some of the history, the background history. Giri Maharaj will read paragraph by paragraph. This will probably take 10 or 15 minutes. And you will read the Spanish paragraph by paragraph. And that way, if you don't already know, then you'll get some background information where this book comes from.
Con esta lectura nos va a dar una referencia de dónde viene este libro.
Since time immemorial, the Bhagavad-gītā has been a prime source of inspiration for many great thinkers and philosophers in both the East and the West. In ancient times, the first commentary on the Gita was written by Adi Shankara, who was the first acharya to treat it as a freestanding text. Subsequently, other great acharyas such as Ramanuja, Madhva, Śrīla Swami and others wrote commentaries on the Gita that presented its essential devotional significance, in stark contrast to Adi Shankara's impersonal interpretation.
Desde tiempo inmemorial, el Bhagavad-gītā ha sido fuente de inspiración fundamental para grandes pensadores y filósofos, tanto en el este como en el oeste. En la antigüedad, el primer comentario del Gita fue escrito por Adi Shankara, quien fuera el primer acharya en tratarlo como texto independiente. Subsecuentemente, otros grandes acharyas como Ramanuja, Madhva, Sridhar Swami y otros escribieron comentarios en el Gita que presentaron su significado devocional esencial, un contraste absoluto a la interpretación impersonal de Adi Shankara.
Okay, let me say a few things as we go, because the background may need some background. So this Adi Shankara, his name is Adi Śaṅkarācārya. Acharya means a great spiritual teacher. In the Vedic tradition, in the Vedic literature, Śaṅkarācārya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva.
Acharya significa... what means acharya? Acharya?
Great teacher.
Great teacher.
Gran maestro. Y Adi Shankar es una encarnación, se dice que del señor Shiva.
Now, for most people who practice yoga beyond just the studio exercise system, but who really get into it a little bit, Lord Shiva is quite important because he is the one who demonstrates the 2,200 asanas, and that may include the pranayamas also.
Que más allá de los ejercicios que se practican en estudio en las salas de yoga, para los que conocen eso, el señor Shiva es de los que ha dado a conocer los 2,000 y tantos ejercicios que se practican.
Lord Shiva is also one of the three principal demigods or devas in the Vedic tradition.
También el señor Shiva es uno de los 3 principales semidioses o devas en la cultura védica.
He is known as the destroyer.
Es conocido como el destructor.
Brahma,
Brahma,
the creator,
el creador.
Vishnu, the maintainer,
Vishnu, el
and Shiva, the
sustentador.
destroyer.
Y Shiva, el destructor.
Now, within those three, you could spend the next, 1 or 2 years just discussing those three and their functions and all the different levels of the truths as concerned these three principal deities.
Estas principales deidades, se puede hablar de ellos por muchos años y de sus funciones y todo, y se puede dar una larga plática por años sobre esto.
Śaṅkarācārya's time is approximately, how many?
It's
2,000, approximately 2,000 and few years ago.
Śaṅkarācārya es desde hace unos 2,000 y piquito más años.
He appeared in India after the time of Lord Buddha.
Él apareció en India después de Buda.
And Śaṅkarācārya was the first person, I say person, in recorded history to write a commentary on the Bhagavad-gītā.
Y Śaṅkarācārya fue uno de los primeros en hacer un comentario sobre el Bhagavad-gītā.
And his commentary leads one to the first step in self-realization, which is known as Brahman or Brahmajyoti, the spiritual effulgence, the spiritual all-inclusive light.
Y el primer paso que da él, la esencia que da, es que él da la realización de Brahman, que es la efulgencia del Supremo, la iluminación.
So we should remember that Śaṅkarācārya, although his commentary leads us to the impersonal realization of reality, that is only the first step.
Y hay que recordar que Śaṅkarācārya da el primer paso a la realización impersonal, y ese es el primer paso que se da.
One of the most important things that Śaṅkarācārya stressed is, in Sanskrit, it is said, aham brahmasmi.
Algo que dice Śaṅkarācārya es aham brahmastami.
Not brahmastami, that's a bomb. Brahmasmi. Brahmasta is a bomb,
Yeah.
a nuclear bomb. Aham brahmasmi. I am conscious. I am consciousness.
Soy consciente.
And
Soy
that,
conciencia.
and that is accompanied with the understanding that I am not this body.
Y ahí se acompaña con el no soy este cuerpo.
The very nature of the body is temporary. It's always changing.
La naturaleza del cuerpo es siempre cambiando. Es cambiante, es temporal.
From birth to death, everyone is in constant change.
De
At every moment, at every nanosecond, the body is changing. It is both recreating itself and it is dying.
Desde el nacimiento hasta la muerte, en cada nanosegundo el cuerpo está cambiando.
There is nothing permanent about the body.
No hay nada permanente en el cuerpo.
But consciousness
Pero la conciencia
can never be destroyed.
nunca puede ser destruida.
It is considered eternal.
Es considerada eterna.
So the first step in self-realization,
El primer paso en la
first step in
autorrealización
yoga is to realize the difference between the body that we inhabit and the conscious being that we are within inside this body,
El
which
primer
is
paso.
speaking, which is seeing.
El primer paso en la práctica del yoga es el entender que no somos este cuerpo.
After Śaṅkarācārya, other great spiritual teachers furthered the understanding of Bhagavad-gītā, or furthered to reveal the realizations of the absolute truth by their commentaries.
Y después de Śaṅkarācārya también hubo otros, ¿cómo se les puede decir? Anexos a la realización después de él.
So sometimes there develops an argument between the personalist, who realize the personality of Godhead, and those who realize the impersonal feature of the personality of Godhead.
Y siempre hay discusión entre lo que es la impersonal y el personal, que realiza que hay una personalidad del Supremo y quien no.
Now these differences are usually worked out in philosophical arguments and not in violent actions of attacking the other person.
Esto se refiere a que son discusiones filosóficas, ¿no? De ataques violentos.
So, it's always important to remember that Śaṅkarācārya was a great teacher, and he is the incarnation of Lord Shiva, and thusly he is always to be remembered with respect.
Y hay que entonces recordar que Śaṅkarācārya es un gran maestro y siempre debe de dirigirse uno a él con respeto, porque es una encarnación del Señor Shiva.
In the Western world, the Bhagavad-gītā has been highly appreciated by erudite scholars and philosophers such as Henry David Thoreau, Friedrich Schlegel, Arthur Schopenhauer, Carl Jung, and Hermann Hesse. Upon reading the Gita, the famous American transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson commented, "I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad-gītā. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us. Nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent, the voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us."
En el mundo occidental, el Bhagavad-gītā ha sido ampliamente apreciado por eruditos y filósofos como Henry David Thoreau, Friedrich Schlegel, Arthur Schopenhauer, Carl Jung y Hermann Hesse. Después de leer el Gita, el famoso trascendentalista americano Ralph Waldo Emerson escribió: "Le debo un magnífico día al Bhagavad-gītā. Fue el primer libro. Fue como si un imperio nos hablara. Nada pequeño o poco merecedor, sino extenso, sereno, consciente, la voz de una vieja inteligencia que se reflexionó al respecto en otra era y clima. De esta forma dispuso de las mismas preguntas que nos hacemos."
Originally, the Bhagavad-gītā is part of the ancient historical epic, the Mahābhārata, composed by the great sage Vyasa in approximately 3100 BCE. The 18 chapters of the Bhagavad-gītā are found within the 6th canto of the Mahābhārata, known as the Bhishma Parva, which altogether contains 117 chapters. Initially, Vyasa wrote the 8,800 core verses of the Mahābhārata, and later his disciples, Vaishampayana and Sutta, added further historical details until the Mahābhārata finally consisted of 100,000 verses, 7 times the size of Homer's Iliad and 15 times the size of the King James Bible.
Originalmente, el Bhagavad-gītā forma parte de una historia épica antigua, el Mahābhārata, compuesto por el gran sabio Vyasa en aproximadamente 3100 años antes de Cristo. Los 18 capítulos del Bhagavad-gītā se encuentran en el 6º canto del Mahābhārata, conocido como Bhishma Parva, que contiene 117 capítulos en su totalidad. Inicialmente Vyasa escribió los 8,800 versos principales del Mahābhārata, y después sus discípulos, Vaishampayana y Sutta, adhirieron más detalles históricos, hasta que el Mahābhārata contara finalmente con 100,000 versos, 7 veces el tamaño de la Ilíada de Homero y 15 veces el tamaño de la Biblia del rey James.
The word Mahābhārata means the history of Greater India, and recounts the story of 2 feuding royal families, the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, and their cousins, the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra. Both Pandu and his brother Dhritarashtra belonged to the royal Kuru dynasty of Hastinapur, modern-day Delhi. Although Dhritarashtra was the elder of the 2, he was born blind, and so the throne was passed on to Pandu, who became the heir apparent.
La palabra Mahābhārata significa la historia de la grandiosa India, y es un recuento de la historia de 2 familias reales en disputa, los Pándavas, hijos de Pandu, y sus primos, los Kauravas, hijos de Dhritarashtra. Pandu y su hermano Dhritarashtra pertenecían a la dinastía real Kuru de Hastinapura, hoy Delhi, aunque Dhritarashtra era el mayor de los 2, nació ciego y el trono pasó a Pandu, convirtiéndose en heredero forzoso.
So this Mahābhārata means the great history of India. So it's certainly an important book. but it's not the most important of books. But within it, we find the Bhagavad-gītā is included in this vast piece of literature. I think it's safe to say it's the single biggest piece of literature in human history. In the West, in the Greek literature, the Odyssey and what is it, the Iliad? Iliad is bigger than any of Shakespeare's work, which came centuries later. And of course, the Bible has been mentioned here because it's a principal spiritual text for people, many people in the world, millions and millions of people, billions, maybe at least 1 billion people in the world draw their spirituality from the Bible. So this Mahābhārata is, what do you say, 15 times bigger in size than...
It is 7 times bigger than the Iliad and 15 times bigger than the Bible.
So it's the most extensive single book ever written, in which Bhagavad-gītā has been extracted. It's a chapter. So this is a very dramatic book. Mahābhārata is super dramatic. I mean, it's full of everything that is India: intrigue, spells, curses, wars, exiles. I mean, it's a very consuming book. It's even full of alien visitations, people from other planets coming to Earth thousands of years ago, and the time that the story is unfolding. It's full of many love affairs. Oh, yes. Many love affairs. That is India. You don't get 1 billion population unless you have a culture that's pro-love affair, right? In fact, I think the opening scene of the Mahābhārata is a love affair between
Ganga and...
no, is it Ganga? I thought it was...
isn't it Parasara?
Parasara, a great saint, a great sage, and a fisherman's daughter.
Yeah.
So it gets your attention right off first chapter. So, but it's full of wisdom, examples, and knowledge of every level. Knowledge in herbology, astrology, political science. It's really a complete education for one who studies the Mahābhārata.
Es el Mahābhārata, en resumen, es un libro muy vasto en literatura, pero no es de lo más importante. Tiene muchas cosas, desde astrología, muchas enseñanzas, pero también tiene mucho drama y teatro, ¿no? Y muchas cosas que se dan. Pero dentro del Mahābhārata existe lo que es el Bhagavad-gītā, que es como más importante.
You didn't mention the aliens.
Ya. También viene ahí que se mencionan que había visitas de extraterrestres.
No, that's the point I wanted to mention today. And we're not talking about some ugly-looking guys with swollen heads and eyeballs bulging out of their hands, and they only have what?
3 fingers, 4 fingers?
3 fingers. They only have 3 fingers. Not those kind of aliens.
Sí, que es un punto que quiere tocar hoy, pero no está hablando de esos aliens o extraterrestres que nos muestran siempre con la cabezota, los ojotes, nada más unos hoyos aquí, unos dedotes largos como los míos.
The reason I wanted to mention that, because in today's alternative science, we call it alternative science, you have mainstream, which is funded by corporations and all types of things, and then you have alternative science, which is independent researchers. Some of them are highly educated, some of them are not highly educated, but it doesn't take a fool to know when he's found gold. So people are discovering things all over the world, and often the only intelligent answer that they can come up with is aliens did it, or aliens taught it. And we will probably be surprised going forward how much of this is true as soon as you remove the E.T. Star Trek version of an alien, get that out of your way, and it becomes an acceptable reality. And it's certainly mentioned there in Mahābhārata.
Como mencionaba, en Mahābhārata se mencionan muchas cosas de los aliens extraterrestres, pero hay muchas como evidencias, pruebas de gente muy educada, altamente preparada, y otras que no. Pero dice, es importante si remueves tantito la presentación que tienes del alien o extraterrestre de E.T., dice, hay mucho más allá. De hecho, hay preguntas de que cómo se han hecho estas cosas, hablando de civilizaciones, y muchas veces es, tal vez los extraterrestres lo hicieron.
Let me just mention one little thing I've mentioned before. I'm always checking up on some of the latest research and history. And we mentioned before about these massive stone pillars and stone carvings that exist in the world, which were made in one place and carried hundreds of kilometers or up and down mountains. And it's just how they did this. I've mentioned this many times. Recently, there's discovery of a pillar,
Pilar.
¿cómo se dice?
Pilar.
A pillar being made 8,000 tons. One pillar in China, not in Egypt, in China. 8,000 tons.
Y bueno, quiero mencionar que hay muchas preguntas porque siempre hay que las civilizaciones, cómo cargaron estas rocas, estas piedrotas de toneladas, las movieron hacia otro lado, cómo lo hicieron. Y ahorita se descubrió que en China hay un pilar de 8,000 toneladas.
That's big.
Sí.
It lies in a quarry. It was under process of being made, being cut out of the earth and raised, and suddenly the work stopped.
¿Y cómo es que las sacan? ¿Cómo es que las cortan y tienen un nivel perfecto?
So along with the aliens comes, they must have had some superior technology. Because how did they cut these things? How could they lift them? How could they move them? So they must have had technology. So there becomes a merger of aliens and alien technology. And this is, according to the Vedas, Mahābhārata, and all these things, yep, that's what did it.
Y como mencionaba, cómo los cortaron, cómo los cargaron, todo eso viene de una tecnología superior. Entonces empieza a hacer ya una conexión de que sí, extraterrestres, pero también con su tecnología de ellos.
By the time of 2,000 years ago, or even 3,000 years ago, those technologies seems to have just been wiped out, lost.
Desde hace 2,000, 3,000 años, pareciera que ya está desaparecida esa tecnología.
And human civilization, again, begins to gather technology, and today we have, I would say, some amazing technology. People are watching this little green button on this screen in about 6 countries in the world, from Australia to India to Czech Republic to Germany to whatever, all over the place. And this is technology. But we don't have the technology to move those stones. That technology we don't have, but we do have technology. It cannot be denied. Human civilization has come up in many ways, and we have many amazing technologies.
Y, perdón, el punto es de que sí, ahorita ya la civilización está igual creando y desarrollando una tecnología que es sorprendente, porque ahorita se está transmitiendo hasta otros 6 países esta plática. Pero lo que sí es que no tenemos esa tecnología para poder mover ese tipo de piedras y transportarlas.
So I also like to point out that not only has physical technologies, how to cut stone and do these types of things, been lost, but many, many subtle technologies have also been lost. And you might refer to it as technologies, but the knowledge, let's call it knowledge, spiritual knowledge, this has also been lost. We do not live at an enlightened time.
Y no solamente la tecnología física, sino también ese tipo de tecnología o energía sutil que ya se le llama conocimiento, ese conocimiento espiritual que también ha estado perdido. Ya no estamos en una era de iluminación. Y antes había mencionado que todo esto de los extraterrestres está mencionado también en los Vedas y en el Mahābhārata como referencia.
We live at a time when religions have replaced spiritual knowledge, and these religions, given the opportunity, will kill each other like we see in history.
Estamos viviendo en un tiempo donde las religiones están cubriendo el conocimiento espiritual, donde te dan la oportunidad para matarte el uno al otro como lo estamos viendo.
The only 2 religions that you can count on not killing each other are Hindus and Buddhists.
Las únicas 2 religiones que no se matan entre sí son los hindús y los budistas.
And technically, these are not religions.
Y técnicamente no son religiones,
These are philosophies
son filosofías.
and bodies of knowledge of reality.
Muy llenos de
cuerpos de conocimiento de realidad.
The religions of the world are primarily, there are many little ones, but primarily they are Christian, Jew, and Muslim.
Las religiones primarias se puede decir que son las cristianas, judías y musulmanas.
And these people have been killing each other back and forth for as long as they existed.
Desde que existen se han estado matando el uno al otro, los unos a los otros.
But this is what most people identify as their spirituality, is their religion.
Pero nos identificamos más con espiritualidad, con estas llamadas religiones.
But the question is, if these were actually enlightened systems of realization and knowledge and awareness, where did they get off killing each other? Oh, and by the way, on God's order. They don't just do this, they do this, God wills it, Allahu Akbar, and whatever, they have their sayings. God wills it.
Si en verdad estas religiones tuvieran un sistema de autorrealización o iluminación espiritual, ¿por qué siempre se toman esto de que se deben de matar los unos a los otros? Porque cada quien lo toma como es la voluntad de Dios, porque Dios está de nuestro bando.
But if you were listening very closely, you could say, well, wait a minute, you just said that India had plenty of fighting, plenty of wars, plenty of curses, all this stuff. So is that their religion? The answer is no. No, that's just social intercourse. That's just the way of the world. They were not fighting each other because one of them believed in Shiva and the other believed in Krishna and the other believed in Buddha or whatever. That's not why they were fighting. They were fighting over politics, insults, mainly insults. In India, it was, everybody went to war over insults. You know, you insulted me and we go to war. I get my army and we go out and bum, 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 and people come out and watch. People come out and picnic and watch the wars in the old days. Now they bring the war right to your house, right inside your house. And it's called total war. You know when it started? Started in the Civil War in the United States with a guy called Andrew Jackson. He invented the term total war. And that's where you bring war to the innocent and break the back of the country. Previously to that time, 1860, I think 4 or 5, battles were fought and people would come and watch. People were watching the Kurukshetra War. People were watching the beginning battles of the Civil War in the 1860s in Estados Unidos, in France, Germany, Napoleon. People came to watch Waterloo because the innocent, the non-armies, you didn't fight the men, women, and children. You fought the soldiers, and they all wore uniforms, so you could see, okay, the guy in the blue, that's my enemy, and I'm in the red, and it's very easy to see who's who. Now, they don't even bother to wear uniforms. They dress like everybody else, and everybody else gets killed. It's called total war. So, and these total wars are sometimes fought not due to insult today. No one has any dignity to be insulted. They fight for oil. They fight for water. They fight for copper, zinc, and the limited resources of the elements. They fight for that. And the money, of course. In the end, it's money. Money's behind every modern war as far as we can go back.
Decía que, bueno, espera un minuto, ¿cómo si estás hablando que el hinduismo no tiene nada, si siempre estás escuchando que hay peleas y eso, pero se refiere que es un aspecto social, porque hay mucho respeto, porque aquellos siguen a Shiva, estos siguen a Vishnu, estos siguen a Krishna, entonces hay como un respeto, pero se pasó un tema ahí donde dice que se hacen guerras más bien por lo político, hay como riñas, y da el ejemplo que antes las guerras se daban de guerreros contra guerreros, ¿no? No se metían a las personas inocentes. Y hasta no sé qué año se hizo lo de la guerra total en Estados Unidos. En Estados Unidos.
864.
En 1864 se declaró ya la guerra total, entonces ahí es donde ya no importa quién te lleves por encima, ¿no? Ya puedes matar a todos los inocentes que se pueda. Pero antes se peleaba por insultos, se dice que en India, ¿no? Pero ahorita ya se pelea por el petróleo, por energía, por zinc, por muchas cosas.
So let's stop that part of the reading and go to the second chapter,
Sure.
to that verse 11. So we're going to read from the second chapter now, otherwise we won't get there. Takes time. The second chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. Some people like to say, I'm among them, second chapter is where the Bhagavad-gītā really begins. The first chapter is just kind of setting the okay, this is where we are, this is who's present. The different armies have gathered for a great fratricidal war, the different personalities. The king is far away, he's blind. His servant Dhananjaya, Sanjaya, not Dhananjaya, sorry. Sanjaya, he envisions the battlefield. He can see and hear everything that's going on, but he's about how many kilometers? About 300 kilometers away from Kurukshetra.
Entonces vamos a leer el segundo capítulo del Bhagavad-gītā a partir del verso 11 y de seguro Maharaj que aquí es donde empieza en verdad el Bhagavad-gītā. ¿Por qué? Porque el capítulo 1 da una referencia de quién está presente, qué va a pasar, quién es quién, de qué lado está quién, y ahí está Sanjaya, quien tiene una visión a 300 kilómetros de cómo se va a dar las cosas en el campo de batalla.
So in the second chapter, Krishna, who's the main speaker in the Gita, he begins to give knowledge to his student, Arjuna.
Y en el segundo capítulo, Krishna, quien es el que habla más ahí en el Gita, empieza a darle una lección a su estudiante Arjuna.
The teachers of different yoga systems frequently, almost always disagree on subsequent chapters of the Gita. What is actually being said? Which system of yoga is the best under the age circumstances? There are many things like, but everybody agrees in the yoga system of the knowledge in the second chapter, because here is the essential knowledge of the Atma, of the self, of consciousness, and the eternality of the self. What if I asked you, would you like to be eternal?
¿Te gustaría ser eterna?
Yes.
You already are eternal. Okay?
Ya eres
But not
eterna,
in this life,
pero
not
esta
in this
vida,
body.
no en este cuerpo.
And if I said, would you like to live forever in this world? If you were really smart, you would say, no.
Pero
Oh, please, no. But the consciousness is eternal. So this is explained first off in the second chapter, which is basically the beginning of the teachings, which are the yoga system.
Estos son el inicio de las enseñanzas del sistema de yoga en este segundo capítulo. Decía que hay muchas luego interferencias entre los maestros de yoga sobre cómo se lleva la secuencia de los sistemas de yoga aquí en el Bhagavad-gītā, pero que todos esos maestros de yoga están de acuerdo en que el segundo capítulo está muy bien. ¿Por qué? Porque habla sobre la naturaleza del Atma, que es eterna, y habla sobre cuál es la naturaleza de ese ser y esa conciencia que está dentro de nosotros.
Now, an interesting thing to notice is that in most of the systems of yoga, how to do that, how to practice that, it can be taught in the sense that, yeah, it can be taught. As you know, you teach yoga. I believe you also teach yoga, some different systems of yoga there. They teach yoga. People can come, and for teaching, there is a fee. In the modern way, there's a fee. Now, almost all the yoga systems can be taught in that way. But bhakti yoga cannot be taught in that way. You cannot teach bhakti yoga in the way that you can teach Ashtanga or Hatha yoga, or even some systems of meditation can be taught. And for that teaching, there's some fee, just like if you went to a college or anywhere to learn something. But bhakti yoga is different. It cannot be taught in that way. It can be shared and it can be resonated, but it cannot be taught. It's not something that's taught, because bhakti is your intrinsic nature. It's who you are already. So there's more to say about that, but that's for now. Huh?
Que en muchos de los sistemas de yoga, normalmente, o también sistemas de meditación, se puede compartir platicándolo. Pero en resumen dice que el Bhakti Yoga no puede ser como nada más compartirlo y hablarlo, sino ya es algo que está ahí porque es la naturaleza intrínseca de quienes somos nosotros.
Yes. All right, so now, just one by one, up those, how many we said? 7? 8?
Yeah, 8. Sanskrit, English.
Yeah. Well, because this Bhagavad-gītā is spoken in Sanskrit, Giri Maharaj will read the Sanskrit and the English, and then you'll read the Spanish. Okay?
Shri Bhagavan Ovacha Asocyanan Vasoshastvam Pragyadhadam Chabashase gatasam agatasamscha nanu shochanti panditaha. Bhagavan Sri Krishna said, while speaking like a wise man, you are actually grieving for that which is unworthy of grief. The wise neither lament for the living nor the dead.
Bhagavan Sri Krishna dijo, mientras hablas como un hombre sabio, te lamentas por aquello que no es digno de lamentación. Los sabios no se lamentan ni por los vivos ni por los muertos.
Natvevaham jato nasam natvam neme janatipaha nacheva napavrishama sarve vayamata param. There was never a time that you, nor I, nor all these warriors assembled here did not exist, nor shall we ever cease to exist in the future.
Nunca hubo un tiempo en el que ni tú ni yo, ni todos los guerreros aquí reunidos, no existiéramos, ni dejaremos de existir en el futuro.
Dehenosmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuhyati. As the Atma passes through the bodily transformations of childhood, youth, and old age, it similarly transmigrates from one body to another at the time of death. The wise are never deluded by this transition.
Así como el Atma pasa a través de las transformaciones del cuerpo en la infancia, juventud y vejez, de forma similar transmigra de un cuerpo a otro a la hora de la muerte. Los sabios nunca se engañan con esta transición.
Matras parshastu kaunteya sitoshna sukudukkadaha agama paino nityas tamsatikshashva bharata. O son of Kunti, the interaction between the senses and the sense objects produce the sensations of cold, heat, pleasure and pain. These feelings are temporary, always appearing and then disappearing. Thus, O descendant of Bharata, you must learn to tolerate them.
Oh hijo de Kunti, la interacción entre los sentidos y los objetos de los sentidos produce sensaciones de frío, calor, placer y dolor. Estos sentimientos son temporales, siempre aparecen y después desaparecen. Así, oh descendiente de Bharat, debes aprender a tolerarlos.
Yam hina vyatayantete purusham purushashava samadukka sukham dhiram somrityattvaya kalpate. O most virtuous one, a sober man who is equipoised in both pleasure and pain and remains undisturbed is certainly qualified for liberation.
Oh, el más virtuoso, un hombre moderado, equilibrado en el placer y el dolor, que permanece sereno, está ciertamente calificado para la liberación.
Nasato vidite bhavo na bhavo vidite sataha ubayo api drishtontas tvannanyos tattvadarshibhihi. Of that which is temporary, there is no eternal existence. Of that which is eternal, there is no destruction or change. Seers of the truth have realized the constitutional position of both.
De aquello que es temporal no hay existencia eterna. De aquello que es eterno no hay destrucción o cambio. Los videntes de la verdad se han dado cuenta de la posición constitucional de ambos.
Avinashitu tadvidi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasham avyatyasya na kaschit kartamarhati. Know for certain that individual consciousness, which pervades the whole body, is imperishable. Nobody can destroy the indestructible individual unit of consciousness.
Ten por seguro que la conciencia individual, que se extiende por todo el cuerpo, es imperecedera. Nadie puede destruir la unidad individual indestructible de la conciencia.
Antabanta ime deha nityas yukta sharirana anashino paramyasya tasmad yudyasva bharata. Embodied consciousness is eternal, imperishable, and infinite. Only the material body is perishable. Therefore, Arjuna, fight.
La personificación de la conciencia es eterna, imperecedera e infinita. Solo el cuerpo material es perecedero. Por lo tanto, oh Arjuna, pelea.
So this is some very important knowledge here, and there's nice different ways to discuss this. So the main thrust being that the consciousness which pervades our whole body, if you stick your finger with a something, kind of it's like, ouch, that hurts, because consciousness is spread throughout the body.
Es muy importante, es interesante todo este tema. Es la conciencia que está dentro de nosotros se expande por todo el cuerpo, que incluso si pinchas tu dedo vas a sentir algo.
And that is explainable that you have a nervous system that goes throughout the body, and if you get pricked, then the nerve sends a message to your brain, and then you go, ouch.
Entonces es explicable cómo te picas y hay un sistema nervioso que conduce y manda una señal a tu cerebro y dices,
So that would be explained to say that the nervous system is the physical system by which consciousness can reach even the most, your toes, the ends of the body, or wherever.
y el sistema nervioso es como una base donde se extiende toda la conciencia desde tus dedos de los pies hasta los otros.
Just like the brain. Thinking takes place in the brain, no?
Como el cerebro, pensar, su lugar es en el cerebro.
What would you say, yes or no?
¿Sí o no?
Carlos Artist. Thinking takes place in the brain?
I believe consciousness is all around the body.
All right, you knew the answer. Move on. If there's a neurologist here, say yes. Thinking takes place in the brain. Your memory is over here. Your love life is over here. Your liking food is back here, and all this stuff. It's all in the brain, right? And of course, if you don't have a brain, you can't function. Correct?
Entonces sí, los neurólogos dirían, sí, tu lado pensante es aquí, de amor acá, para comer acá, pero si no tienes cerebro, entonces no puedes pensar, no funcionas.
Wrong. Do you know there's an unknown number of people living in this world that don't have brains? Now, most of them are politicians. Right, no, but I'm talking about there's a disease. You can look it up on Wikipedia and get ready for a shock. And they don't even know how many people have this disease. I think one estimated is at least 1 in 100,000 people. And you don't know that you have it until you go for a CAT scan of your head. And guess what? There's no brain. There's just gray liquid. It's called hydroencephalitis. You can look it up on Wikipedia and hundreds of articles. And he worked at the post office, and something happened, and he had to go to the hospital and get some x-rays, some box hit him in the head or something. And when they looked at it, there's no brain. It's just some liquid inside. So the brain, which we would say your memory's here, your love is here, your food is, that's all gone. It's not there. It's just a liquid. And they estimate 1 in 100,000 people. So in a town with 1 million people, there may be at least 10 people living like that, but they don't even know because they've never gone and had their head x-rayed. Yeah. And these people have average IQ intelligence. They're not stupid. They're not stupid.
Y pues está equivocado que sí se puede vivir sin cerebro, porque de 1 en 100,000 se ha descubierto últimamente que de una persona en 100,000 habitantes no tienen cerebro, y se descubrió en un cartero, me parece, en Francia, que tenía un problema y le fueron a hacer una, ¿cómo se llama? Radiografía, ¿no? En la cabeza, y vieron que no tenía cerebro, es como puro líquido ahí, pero la cosa es que viven normal, llevan su vida normal y también piensan y tienen un IQ bueno como cualquiera.
So in the yoga system, the mind, which now we refer to as the brain, are two different things. It's called mana, and it's an energy, a subtle energy that allows thinking to take place. And if you didn't have mana, that brain muscle, which is basically just a muscle, wouldn't be able to do anything.
Que en el sistema de yoga se le menciona a esa energía que nos permite pensar, mana, porque el cerebro simplemente es un músculo ahí colgante.
So there are 8 primary elements in the yoga system. I forget them as we say them. Earth, fire, water, air, space, which is called ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. False ego is a material energy. It belongs in the greater material energy, which is called the Mahatattva. And everyone has an ego. If it's small or big, everyone has a false ego. I am this body, that's the root of that. And then we have their extended ego. I am the Presidente, I'm the greatest, I'm this, I'm that way, People have their extended egos, but everybody has some ego. And that is an energy called ahankara. And intelligence is called buddhi. And the mind is called mana. and then the others, earth, air, fire, water, etc. Krishna says these are all material elements. These are all material elements. And the closest one to spiritual is intelligence and a purified ego. They're the closest to your spiritual identity, but that is not. They are not spiritual. Spiritual identity is beyond these 8 elements.
Hay 8 elementos materiales en el cuerpo, que es la tierra, agua, fuego, aire, el espacio o éter que se le llama, la mente, la inteligencia y el ego falso. Y se dice que todos estos son elementos materiales, pero más allá de esos elementos materiales, lo que se le acerca a ser no material es la inteligencia y un ego purificado.
So the point is, the brain is not your mind. The brain is a muscle which relates to your nervous system, which is a vehicle by which your mind and intelligence will work. And your ego and all these things will be dealt out to the rest of you, and you'll express your ego through your actions. I am the greatest, like Muhammad Ali used to beat his chest. He was the greatest, and that's, his body taking part in his ego. But even without those things, such as the brain, even without the eyes, sometimes people are known to see and be able to think and function, and they don't even have that sense. You see, because behind it is something higher, which has all the senses. The Atma, consciousness, has a spiritual mind, spiritual senses, spiritual sight, and all these things.
Y la raíz de todo este ego falso que se mencionaba, uno de los elementos es el que nos identificamos con el cuerpo, pero también hay un incluso sin tener todos esos sentidos, los ojos, primero, antes que nada, el cerebro decía que simplemente es un músculo que está funcionando para dar las señales a nuestro cuerpo, y que la mente es una energía que está detrás de todo eso, es un elemento material también, pero que incluso sin tener esos sentidos como los ojos, más allá de todo eso, hay sentidos espirituales, que es la inteligencia, una mente espiritual.
So, the reality of this world is experienced through our senses.
La realidad de este mundo es que experimentamos a través de nuestros sentidos.
In English we have a saying, seeing is believing.
Se dice, ver es creer.
So reality is experienced through the senses. So earlier this morning we were discussing, and so I said to Giri Maharaj, I said, so what is self-realization?
En la mañana discutían, ¿qué es autorrealización?
Well, it's possible to give multiple explanations to what is
Se
self-realization.
puede dar múltiples explicaciones de qué es eso.
But the answer I presented to my own question was, it is reality beyond the senses. Understanding or perception of reality beyond the senses.
Una percepción de la realidad más allá de los sentidos.
So, have you ever heard this saying, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound if no one is there to hear it? It's like I clap my hand, and everyone heard the sound, right?
Uh-huh.
But if no one is in this room, including me, and that sound is made by a machine going, beep, knocking two books together, does it make a sound?
Que hay ¿cómo lo puedo explicar?
Dicho o una frase.
Una frase de que si un árbol se cae en una selva,
Y nadie lo escucha.
¿Quién está ahí para oírlo?
Pues realmente se cayó o realmente emitió un sonido porque nadie estaba para escucharlo.
Now this question is easier than which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know that one, right?
sí.
Okay, but these are the types of questions that rishis in India used to spend, maybe lifetimes contemplating, thinking on these things. And the answer is no, because sound is what your ear vibrates. Your ear just picks up a vibration. There's no sound until your ear picks it up. Then it makes a sound. What you call sound, which you hear. You hear. So it's called Sankhya. Every sense and sense object have a relation. You see, it's like I've explained before. You go in outer space and you go, there's the sun, and it's pitch black until you stick your hand up, and then the light bounces off your hand and you can see the sunlight. But when you move your hand in space and there's no asteroid flying by or some, star particles flying by, there's nothing there. So light has no meaning unless it has something to shine on. You follow? Yeah. So sound has no meaning unless there's an ear to hear it. Now you could put a recorder there and you could record the sound and say, see, there was sound. And you go, no, that recording machine is an extension of your ear. You've created an ear. They even look like ears. These little speakers, they have these circles and stuff. Your ears got these circles. It's just a replica, you see. Like this camera is a replica of our eyes. It's recording a little bit replica of our mind-brain operation. It's storing the recording on a chip. And technology gets pretty out there too, some of the technology, infrared. They have infrared. A man has had his arm amputated, but for months afterwards, there's an extension that's visible through different light rays. After time, it fades away. So many amazing things in technology.
Hay algo que se llama Sankhya, que es la relación entre los objetos de los sentidos y tus sentidos, porque decía que si ahorita el aplauso que dio, escuchamos algo, pero no es de que haya un sonido, sino más bien es una vibración que hasta que entra en nuestros oídos es cuando se concreta que es un sonido. Y decía que ahorita, por ejemplo, ya la tecnología es sorprendente, cómo es posible que, que sea una representación de nuestro ojo la cámara, y que incluso ya hay ahorita hasta la tecnología de los infrarrojos y más allá, que puedes ver hasta, aunque no tengas amputada tu mano, ¿sí dijo así? Sí, ¿no? Puedes ver todavía por un tiempo la extensión y ya después se desvanece.
So self-realization can be explained in this way. Perception of reality beyond your senses. Our senses can only reach so far.
Los sentidos no pueden ir mucho más allá. La autorrealización es una percepción de la realidad más allá de los sentidos.
The senses you have also, in Bhagavad-gītā, you have 5 working senses, and you have 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. A working sense, digestion. Your stomach is a working sense. It's considered a sense. The sense of you digest. You don't even know how it happens. It just works along, you digest, and you go, oh, I got indigestion, or like, yeah, that was really good, I'm ready to eat some more, right? Digestion, that's called a working sense. Your legs and your arms, they're working senses. You walk, you do work, you grab things. These are called your working senses. You don't acquire knowledge by your leg. Think about it. With your leg, you get yourself up the hill, and then with your eyes, you see, there's the pipila, and you acquire knowledge of where that thing is. Not with your leg. Your leg just got you up there where then you can see. So the eye is knowledge acquiring. The leg is working sense. You have 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. And they are all centered around the mind. The mind says, walk, we walk. You ever tried to figure that out? How do you even walk? You just do it, right? If it's all going on. Right? The leg is following the command of the mind. So, then you open the eyes. It's all these things, they're considered circling the mind. The mind is the sense within, the controller of all the others.
Hay 5 sentidos que se les llama como los trabajadores, que es, pone el ejemplo de, para caminar, pues se utilizan las piernas y te lleva a un lugar donde vas a poder ver y ya te vas a dar una ubicación de, sí, ahí está el pípila. Pero hay otros 5 sentidos. Pero alrededor de esos 5 sentidos está la mente, que es como el amo quien controla todos estos sentidos.
The voice is also a working sense.
También la voz es
Hey, get off my foot! I express myself. Right? I don't acquire knowledge by speaking.
No me aproximo al conocimiento solo por estar hablando. Es un sentido también trabajando.
You acquire knowledge by observing with the eyes, but not by speaking. You acquire knowledge by feeling, ouch, that's hot. You acquired some knowledge. You see. You acquire the greatest knowledge, however, by listening, hearing. It's called Shravanam. Hearing.
No por hablando te vas a acercar al conocimiento. Por ver, sí tienes una percepción de eso. Pero por sentir, tampoco te vas a acercar a algún conocimiento. Pero para obtener un conocimiento un poco más elevado, es a través del escuchar, que es el Sravanam.
And you acquire merit by speaking. If you speak the truth, if someone speaks the truth, you hear the truth, you acquire that knowledge, Atmagyan, knowledge of the soul. And we don't use that word much, soul, because it's not the really good word, but knowledge of eternal consciousness with your ears.
Si alguien está hablando conocimiento del Atma y uno lo está escuchando, uno va a obtener ese conocimiento.
But for one who speaks the truth, they acquire what's called merit or sukriti. And sukriti is like the fast lane on the autostrada or something. Sometimes there's a lane, like in Los Angeles, there's this one lane. It's like, you can't drive in there unless you have 3 or more people in the car, or you have a certain pass, then you can go quickly. Everybody else is stuck bumper to bumper, right?
Que para aquel que habla la verdad, también se le acumula un sukriti. ¿Qué es sukriti? Es como la línea rápida para ir hacia un lado, como pone el ejemplo de que en Los Ángeles es donde están todos los carros estacionados y avanzando poco a poquito, o está otra línea, otro carril donde puedes ir a menos que vayas con 3, 4 personas y es más rápido avanzar.
So when it's very difficult to speak and not hear, right?
Es muy difícil el hablar y no escuchar.
So who's speaking the truth is also becoming purified or receiving that truth.
Quien está hablando la verdad también se empieza a purificar o a recibir esa verdad.
Now, the amazing thing about bhakti yoga is everything isn't just laid out in books. You read a book, therefore you read the book, you heard what the book said. No, it's not just what's written in the book.
Lo impresionante del Bhakti Yoga es que no nada más se trata de leer el libro y ya lo que está en el libro y ya.
The book is the prospect. You're not the body, you're already eternal, God is a person, all these different things, important things are there. That's a prospect, but how do you know?
El prospecto es el libro es el prospecto donde tú no eres este cuerpo, eres eterno, hay un supremo, pero ¿cómo lo sabes?
It's similar to going to college. There's a degree, right? You don't know if you're going to get it or not. First you have to go there, and you have to study, and you have to, put the parties aside, and you have to really hit the book, and you have to go through the process. And then, then the reality comes. You graduate, you get your degree, right? It's similar.
Es como vas a la universidad y quieres un doctorado, pues no es como que quiero el doctorado y va a llegar a ti. Simplemente tienes que dar unas prioridades, hacer de un lado las fiestas, perder el tiempo, meterte al proceso y después te das cuenta, sí, ya tengo ese doctorado. Es muy similar.
In the beginning, though, it's just the prospect. It's very hard to live. You're not the body. We live in the body world. First thing in the morning, stretch. Oh, my arm slipped on my arm. It hurts. Next thing, brush the teeth, wash the face, wake up. It's all about the body, the body, the body.
Puede ser complicado el decir que no somos este cuerpo, pero vivimos en el mundo de los cuerpos. Te levantas, ¿qué haces? Te estiras, adolorido, adormilado, te lavas la boca, te echas agua en la cara y todo tiene relación con el cuerpo.
With the practice
con la práctica
of bhakti yoga, then the prospect becomes the reality.
Con la práctica del Bhakti Yoga, el prospecto se empieza a convertir en una realidad.
If somebody had to ask me, well, have you realized any of these things? You're not the body, or Krishna's God, or the super soul, or any. Have you realized any of this? Oh, I would have to say yes, and without lying, or without exaggerating. And this morning I realized, oh my God, I've been doing this for 51 years. That's a long time. And believe me, if I wasn't getting it, I'd quit, right? You do something for so long and nothing is there. You know, even Mother Teresa, you ever read her letters which are available? She doubted everything. After a lifetime of doing this thing, she doubted that there even was a God. That means there's no self-realization there. Something's wrong. Something's good. I want to beat up on Mother Teresa, a good woman, good heart. But for spiritual realization, something missing there after a lifetime of that sacrifice and all of that, to then just be full of doubt, even doubting the very existence of God.
Y si alguien me preguntara que si, pero ¿a poco ya te diste cuenta de que no somos este cuerpo, que existe un supremo, que pues ese supremo es Krishna? Que me preguntaran, pues yo les diría completamente sí, porque hoy me desperté y me di cuenta que llevo 51 años practicando esto, claro, con dudas y todo, y a punto de correr, pero llega un momento en esta vida que lo he realizado. Pero si han visto las últimas cartas de la Madre Teresa, que antes de morir estaba dudando de la existencia de Dios muchas veces. ¿Por qué? Porque no hay autorrealización ahí. Y entonces algo está faltando ahí. No es que esté mal, simplemente es una mujer de gran corazón, generosa y ha hecho muchas cosas buenas, pero falta esa parte.
So first accept the prospect.
Primero aceptar el prospecto.
And the second thing is learn to think.
Y la segunda es aprender a pensar.
Learn to think deeply.
Pensar profundamente.
We live in a world that is so shallow today. It is so shallow. It's unmeasurably shallow. People don't think about anything.
Superficial.
Superficial.
Vivimos en un mundo donde todo es muy superficial, muy superficial, que se piensa bien poquito.
So when we say there's a lot of people out there with no brain, well, you know, in different ways, no brain. People don't even think. Here's a hospital right down the panoramic, right? You go down there and, man, the mothers are out there with their kids. There must be 50 to 100 of them every day pouring in that hospital. And nobody asks, why my kids are sick? And many of the parents will remember, it wasn't that way when we were kids. We weren't always at the bloody hospital. But nobody thinks why that is.
Aquí abajo en la panorámica está el hospital y siempre hay como 50 mujeres o a cientos que están cargando a sus bebés. Mi hijo está enfermo, pero nadie se pregunta, ¿por qué está enfermo mi hijo? Y antes, si antes no era así.
And if you go there and you just sit and you just watch and then go down to La Comer and wait until people are checking out with their food, then you start to connect the dots. You are what you eat. We eat a bunch of poisonous food in this world. Poison. It's literally, I heard what one guy said, in future, if we're lucky, people are going to look back and go, what was wrong with these people, man? They sprayed their food with poison. Pesticides, herbicides. It's killing off all the bees. By billions, zillions, bees are just dropping dead and disappearing. Bees. Why are these things? People don't think. They don't analyze. What is food? You eat, great. It tastes good, makes the stomach feel good. But what is food for? It's for energy, it's for building the body. Then why is everybody getting so fat? It didn't used to be that way. Did not used to be that way. Overweight was rare. Now overweight is the standard for kids in school. Overweight. It used to be one overweight person in a school of 2,000 kids. Maybe 2 guys were overweight, or one of the girls or something. That was it. Now, it's everybody. Hey, look at that skinny guy over there. You know, kids, hey, skinny. Right? You know, it used to be, hey, fatso. You know, now, hey, skinny. You know,
Bullying.
why? Why is it? People don't think.
Si te vas a la comer y empiezas a ver las canastillas cómo están pasando, pues toda la comida que se están llevando, y te empiezas a dar cuenta que empiezas a conectar los puntos. Como ya ahorita es como normal estar en sobrepeso, cuando antes un gordito o dos gorditos eran como algo raro, y ahorita el flaquillo es como el señalado, ¿no? Y el gordito es como un estándar en los niños y también en los grandes.
And some people say, people don't think by design. You are educated not to think. It starts from the time we're little children.
Y es que todo empieza desde cuando estamos chiquitos, pequeños, y el sistema de educar es para no pensar.
Rather than education, modern education, for the most part, is indoctrination or propaganda of some sort or another. Depending on where you live, what kind of propaganda you receive, what kind of indoctrination you receive.
Y todo está como muy adoctrinado, depende de dónde vivas y la circunstancia es donde la propaganda que se te está dando.
So with distractions of enjoyment, people are easily satisfied and don't look beyond with questions.
Sí, y con distracciones, de absortos en el disfrute, fácilmente somos distraídos para no pensar.
Like a friend of mine in Kerala, South India, he went to a Christian school. Remember, what was his name, Hanuman,
Mm-hmm.
the martial artist? So he went to a Christian school, and within all the education, they also got some Bible education. And he read the story of Adam and Eve, and then they're out from the Garden of Eden. And then they had two sons, Cain and Abel. And then Cain killed Abel. And then Adam died. And that left Eve and her son. So he went to the priest. He said, "Where'd the rest of us come from?" I hope you have an answer.
Como un amigo se llama Hanuman del sur de la India, fue a una escuela cristiana y pues leyó la historia de la Biblia de que venimos de Adán y Eva y tuvieron dos hijos, Caín y Abel, y Caín mata a Abel y después se muere Adán y queda Eva y Caín. Y entonces la pregunta es, ¿de dónde venimos nosotros?
I remember
Hay una
having
respuesta.
that similar question when I was little and going to school. I was about 13, and then all of a sudden that story went, where'd the rest of us come from?
Yo tenía esas preguntas cuando tenía como 13 años y pues, ¿de dónde venimos entonces nosotros?
But as I mentioned the other day, later I was a little older, I read the Bible, don't worry about it. Cain married the daughter of a giant. It's just a few chapters later. It's like, where'd the giants come from?
Y entonces ya después estudiando se da cuenta que Caín se casa con la hija de un gigante. Pero ¿de dónde vienen esos gigantes?
Talk about a strange relationship. Sí, señorita. A giant means at least 7-8 foot tall, But we're those people. And those people have a name in the Bible? They're called the Nephilim. It's like, what the hell's going on here, man? I thought God made Adam and Eve. What about the giants? Who made them? And then later on it got worse. God gave them Israel. And said, but there's already some other people I created living there, so you have to kill them all. Get on with it. Yes. The what do they call the Phoenicians?
Canaanites.
Canaanites. The Canaanites, which are now the Palestinians. So they say. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But why more people don't look at this? Because I tell you, for every 1,000 Christians, you've been rare to find 2 that have actually read the Bible. Read parts of it? Yes. Read the whole thing and no, they don't even read it. During the medieval period, which is up to 1700s, the Catholic Church had a list of forbidden books that were punishable by death if you were found reading those books. And you know what the first one on the list was? The Bible. No one was allowed to read the Bible except the priest. And not 1 in 100 priests knew how to read. And that's why Martin Luther created the first Protestant church, and took the Bible and translated it from Latin, or actually it wasn't even in Latin, it was in Hebrew and Greek, and translated it to German so people could begin to read the good book. Punishable by death up till that time for reading the Bible.
Y entonces no hace como mucho sentido esta conexión de, pues, de dónde vienen los gigantes y todo esto. Y sobre todo porque se llega a un punto donde de mil cristianos, solamente 2 te han leído como la Biblia completa para ver cómo está de raro y confuso todo ahí, ¿no? Pero los demás leen pedacitos. Y de hecho está como confundido esto porque llegó un momento donde Martin Luther...
En el tiempo medieval.
Ah, sí. En el tiempo medieval, la Biblia, hubo una época en el tiempo medieval donde se prohibían ciertos libros y el primero en prohibirse era la Biblia. Y entonces fue cuando Martín Lutero la tradujo al latín,
de griego y romano a alemán.
A alemán, para que lo pudieran leer otros.
And one of the reasons for this prohibition is because the Bible, if you read it, it raises more questions than answers.
Y si lees la Biblia, te hace que te generes más preguntas que te dé respuestas.
But I can tell you with absolute confidence and assurity, the Bhagavad-gītā is not like that.
Pero con absoluta confianza les puedo decir que el Bhagavad-gītā no es como eso.
When you read or study Bhagavad-gītā, yes, it raises questions, and it is meant to raise questions.
Y de hecho, cuando lo lees, sí, hay preguntas y está hecho para que se hagan preguntas.
But each of those questions has a logical, intelligent, and even scientific, what we would say, philosophical answer. Because Bhagavad-gītā is not a story about a bunch of people who got captured as slaves and then got free and crossed the ocean and went like this and then fought and got their lands and all this stuff. No, Bhagavad-gītā, it takes place on a battlefield, but it's a philosophy. It's the philosophy of life. It's the philosophy of self-realization and the knowledge required.
Y en el Bhagavad-gītā hay respuestas que te llevan a lo lógico, a lo inteligente, a lo científico, se puede decir también filosófico, y no, porque el Bhagavad-gītā no está hecho no fue hecha solo para una historia donde, sí, tú le he elegido y vamos a cruzar el océano y de repente se cayó el océano.
There's a saying in English, the diablo, is in the details. The devil's in the details.
El diablo está en los detalles.
Now, it's used in different ways.
Se usa de diferentes formas.
But it goes back in history to a time when many people, have questioned, well, wait a minute, this book says this, and this says that, you said Jesus did this, and you said he did that, and these questions with no answers arrive.
Entonces llega un momento en la Biblia de que vas para aquí, para allá, y sí, dijo esto, dijo lo otro y aquello, y te sacan muchas preguntas, pero no hay respuestas para eso.
So, when the church would encounter questions that they couldn't answer, they would say, the devil put that doubt there. Diablo.
Entonces cuando la iglesia se daba cuenta que no tenía respuestas, automáticamente decía, el diablo puso eso ahí para...
Even so much 1,000 years ago, there was a debate in Rome, and basically, I'll summarize it. People were saying, intelligent, educated people were saying, wait a minute. Jesus turned water to wine, Jesus raised the dead, Lazarus, he cured a leper, he did all these things. Yes. But all these things were done thousands of years ago already. They're in the Greek literatures, they're in the Roman records, they're in the Egyptians. All these things, not some, every story you have, they said, about Jesus, somebody else already did it. So why are we supposed to believe he's the Son of God? Because he did it, everybody else already did it also, so what's the deal here? And the answer was, first explain the question.
Antes decía que el Bhagavad-gītā es para la autorrealización, para el conocimiento del alma, del ser, y ahorita menciona que todos los milagros que se mencionan que hizo Jesús de curar la lepra, de levantar a los muertos, de convertir el agua en vino, etcétera, etcétera, personas inteligentes se hacen las preguntas de ¿cómo es posible esto? Que dices que es el Hijo de Dios, si esto ya fue hecho miles de años atrás. por los griegos, por los egipcios, por etc.
Now, bear in mind, they pointed out these things happened 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000 years before then, before Jesus.
3,000, 2,000, 1,000 años antes que Jesús.
And the answer was, yes, it's true. The devil did it.
Y la respuesta fue, sí, es verdad, el diablo lo
This
hizo.
was the answer. The devil knew that Jesus is coming.
El diablo
He will
sabía.
do all these miracles. So the devil got here first and did all these things just to confundus you, just to confuse you. That was the official answer.
La respuesta oficial fue de que, sí, fue todo prefabricado para que el diablo hiciera todas estas cosas y después ya llegara Jesús.
And standing next to the preacher
Y
was a
quisiera
Roman
confundirte.
centurion. And when you started to argue back, the centurion just kind of loosened up his sword a little bit and gave you a stink eye. And then you said, oh, yes, of course, I see exactly what you mean. Because anybody that didn't accept it, cut their throat.
Sí, y para que fuera aceptado, simplemente lo que hacían es que te enseñaban la espada y con una mirada firme, entonces no te quedaba de otra para aceptar de que sí, es así. Si no
So
te mataban.
we invite questions. Take the biggest magnifying glass you have and look at the Gita and answer questions. Ask questions. And you will find that for every question, regardless of which way it goes, a historical kind of question, what to speak of philosophical or the spiritual knowledge, you will find an answer. There is nowhere where we just say, oh, he did it, and there is no answer. Understand?
En el Bhagavad-gītā se invita a que agarres tu lupa y vayas a fondo y vengan esas preguntas, porque en el Bhagavad-gītā vas a encontrar respuestas, no hay de que no, él lo dijo, no está aquí, siempre va a estar una respuesta ahí.
Now, I'll tell you this short story how that kind of almost the same thing, but it happens 2,000 years later in our modern time. A friend of mine who's passed away, he was much older than myself. He studied philosophy, took a PhD in the philosophy of Śaṅkarācārya and Vedanta Sutra. He did a PhD study in India on that subject, so he was very learned.
Un amigo que ya se murió hace algunos años, él hizo un doctorado sobre estas cosas en India.
So, but then later, he continued his spiritual quest. He became a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, and he became quite acquainted with the full philosophy of self-realization, etc.
Y después un discípulo de Bhaktisiddhanta.
Ajá, después siguió el camino de la autorrealización y llegaba a ser un discípulo
De Bhaktisiddhanta.
So there's a place in India, in the state of Rajasthan, called Bikaner. And back pre-1940s, 1930s, there were over how many kings in India? Actually, there were over 500 kings in India at the time. 500 principalities, they call them, princes and kings, etc. And they had their courts, they had their armies, they had their full independence, but above them was the British ruler, which was Queen Victoria, and King Edward, I think, after that.
Estaba la reina Victoria hace unos años en la época de los británicos y debajo de ellos había como 500 principales reinos.
So,
de reyes y príncipes.
So in those days, a king, if he wished, he could sentence you to death in his kingdom. He had that power.
Tenían ese poder de que, ¿cómo se le dice? Podías como morir.
Ajá, cortarte la cabeza.
Sí, te ponen-
If you did some crime, he could
Si
sentence.
hacías algún crimen,
He
inmediatamente
didn't have to have a
cortarte
court
la
and a
cabeza.
judge and a jury. The king could just sentence you to death.
Ajá, no tendrías que ir a caso ni nada de eso, sino
So this is in
inmediatamente se
the
decidía.
1930s.
Esto eran los...
So my friend
1930.
was quite younger then, and he went to a lecture in the court of the king of Bikaner, and the court lecture was being done by one of the successors of the original Śaṅkarācārya. They have a disciplic succession for 2,000 plus years, and so he's listening to this.
Y una vez fue una conferencia, una lectura, donde este amigo, discípulo de Bhaktisiddhanta, donde estaba uno de los sucesores de Śaṅkarācārya, uno de los muchos sucesores que después...
So at the end of the talk, there were questions invited. This was Dr. Obio Kapoor, by the way, those of you who know Prabhupada's godbrother. And so as the questions, he was asking the Swami various questions, but the questions were getting progressively more difficult for the Swami to answer.
Entonces empezaron a hacer preguntas, pero poco a poco, conforme pasó el tiempo, se empezaron a llevar de un modo que se hicieron muy dificultosas para el Swami.
So with every reply, then Dr. Kapoor would say, well, yes, but, and he would give another question, making it more and more difficult.
Sí, preguntaba y respondía y decía, sí, claro, pero este doctor preparaba otra todavía más difícil.
The questions became more and more difficult because the Swami was trying to establish that the impersonal Brahman, pure light, that's it. There's nothing beyond that. There's nothing higher than that. That is the ultimate absolute truth. But this person was a Vaishnava, and he had questions that would ultimately demonstrate that no, you don't have all the answers. There, something lies beyond. And he's quoting Sanskrit Upanishads. What is beyond? What happened? Where do you go when you get through all that spiritual light? What lies beyond that?
Entonces se volvió dificultosas las preguntas y ¿por qué? Porque este doctor pues era un Vaishnava y el Swami solo llegó a un punto donde existe el Brahman impersonal, esa energía, y hasta ahí. Y sus preguntas las hacía basándose en escrituras sagradas y sánscrito, y le decía que hay algo más allá de solamente esa energía Brahman impersonal.
So the Swami was getting a little irritated.
Se estaba enojándose ya el Swami.
He's being put on the spot, right? So Kapoor told me he was on a dais, like a mini type throne, a seat, and each side was a court guard who was there on the order of the king. Right?
Y entonces había como de cada lado de donde estaba sentado en su tronito este Swami, había como un guardia que era del rey.
Y el invitado, el discípulo.
And
Sí.
at one point, Kapoor says one of the guards kind of leaned a little forward, gave him a raised eyebrow, and just loosened his sword a little bit from his thing.
Entonces se le acercó uno de los guardianes y le enseñó el filo, ¿no?
And then Kapoor said, oh yes, I see exactly what you mean now.
Bueno, sí, ya me doy cuenta a qué te refieres.
So, also a lesson, it's not important to win every argument.
Sí, lo importante aquí es que no es importante siempre ganar cada discusión.
Well, that system was still in effect. That if you irritated the Swami and the king didn't like it, he could have your head cut off.
Sí, eso puede pasar, que si no le gustas al Swami, el rey puede cortarte la cabeza.
And it was really like that, even more so, thousands of years ago.
Y era todavía más rudo hace como unos miles de años atrás.
So the system in India, however, has always been to establish the truth through debate, through dialogue, through discussion.
El sistema en India para establecer una verdad siempre ha sido en el argumento, en la discusión, en debate.
Not because I have the bigger army.
No es porque, yo tengo el mayor ejército.
Not because I can put you to death and there's nothing you can say or do about it. It will happen if I say so. Therefore, accept my religion, Islam, accept my religion, Christianity, or whatever.
No es porque acepta mi religión, Islam o lo que sea, porque si no te voy a empujar hacia lo que es la muerte.
These things were always dealt out with the earnestness to achieve a higher understanding.
Y todo esto que se hacía antes era más bien para juntarnos y aproximarnos a un entendimiento más elevado.
And the system was that when the two differing opinions would come together in the court, then the loser who conceded defeat would then become a student of the person who had defeated.
Y el sistema era que los dos bandos, el que perdiera en ese debate, se convertía en un discípulo de los que ganaban.
But nowadays, you see debates on television, whatever, whether they're spiritual debates, does God exist, or whatever, political debates, and there's clearly a winner. And at least most people say, "Oh, that was he clearly won the debate," but everybody just goes away. Nobody surrenders because the whole move is not to achieve a higher understanding, higher
Y ahora se puede ver en la televisión los debates de lo que sea, hasta cuestiones espirituales. Sí ganó, pero nadie se rinde. Más bien es como, no se rinde uno, ¿por qué? Porque el punto no es llegar a entendimientos elevados.
So when he says Vaishnava, that means the student of bhakti-yoga, who is in the process of bhakti-yoga.
Cuando se dice Vaishnava, es aquel que es el estudiante del bhakti-yoga.
Who practices yoga for the impersonal realization is usually called a Vedantist.
Cuando un estudiante de yoga practica por la cuestión impersonalista, se le llama vedantista.
All right, so anyway, I've said a few things here, and I wanted to mention that forthcoming, going forward, if you cultivate some questions during the week or during the class or at any time, some questions, we really do welcome your questions. They may arise from doubt, or they might arise from curiosity, or the only type of question that isn't that welcomed are just the questions that are spitefully challenging. But be prepared. If you have a challenging question, get ready for a challenging answer. Fire meets fire.
Qué bueno, de aquí en adelante invita a que si durante la semana o durante la clase hay preguntas, dudas o por curiosidad, pues que son bienvenidas, ¿no? Que me gustaría mucho. Pero también que si tienes una pregunta retadora, pues te prepares con una respuesta que es retadora, porque el fuego invita al fuego.
So, ¿hay preguntas?
¿Preguntas?
Yo solo un comentario me puedes traducir
Sí.
en relación a la importancia del Bhagavad-gītā y de conciencia de Krishna, que es tan diferente de la religión católica, ¿no? En cuanto a que la religión católica establece los dogmas, y esto significa que tú tienes que creer en eso. Así tengas muchas preguntas, muchas dudas, si quieres estar en esa religión, tú tienes que creer lo que te digan sin preguntar, sin argumentar. Ese es un dogma. Y en conciencia de Krishna no hay dogmas, todo se establece, todo te lleva, como decía Maharaj, a una respuesta científica, espiritual, lógica y de mucho conocimiento, ¿no? Esa es una gran diferencia entre esas dos religiones.
She said that in Catholic religion is always like you have to believe everything. It's like a dogmatic, no? You have to believe and don't question anything. You have to believe, and it's the difference between Krishna consciousness is like you said, no, logic, scientific side, and intelligence and philosophy. So, what's a commentary?
Well, let me just mention that you have the famous atheists of today. Who are they? Hawkins?
Dawkins, Hitchens, Sam Harris.
Sam Harris. These are popular atheists who represent the whole atheistic.
Déjenme mencionar algo ahorita, que están los debatibles ateístas que mencionaron.
They don't touch Eastern religion. They don't touch Hinduism. They don't touch Vedanta. They don't touch Vaishnava. They don't touch Buddha. They don't touch anything Eastern. Their whole argument is with the what do they call the Judeo-Christian, Mohammedan, the Abrahamic religions. Muslim, Christian, Jew. The argument is with them. And that's why I say these religions have done more to increase atheism.
Que todos estos ateístas siempre están dirigiéndose no hacia la cuestión del este del planeta, ¿no? Sino al occidente, que son las religiones abramínicas, que involucran al judeocristiano musulmán. Y eso ha provocado que se vuelva uno más antirreligioso, ¿no?
Now India's had what's his name? Charvak Muni, big atheist. India's had their share of atheistic philosophers also. But it's a very different argument, a completely different argument.
También en India está un Charvaka Muni que era un ateísta muy poderoso, ¿no? Pero el argumento, la discusión es totalmente diferente.
So, what was I saying? Oh, no, I forgot.
De ateísta.
Huh?
India has atheist philosophers as well.
Yeah. I was saying about the argument. Yes, it's based on, yes, you have to believe things, but it's a system based on salvation. Christianity in particular, salvation.
Y sí es que tienes que creer, pero está basado, por ejemplo, el cristianismo en la salvación.
All this elaborate story happened, and if you believe it, you go to heaven.
Todo es una
If you
historia
don't.
elaborada. Si lo crees, vas al cielo. Y si no,
If you don't, well, God will boil you in oil forever.
te va a hervir Dios en una olla por siempre.
So, interesting observation. Christianity also believes in eternity of all living beings. The question is, will you burn forever? Ouch, forever? Really? Not just for a day or 100 years, forever? God's really uptight about this thing. I mean, these are the things that just settle in a logical mind and goes, what are you talking about? What kind of a God is there? What kind of a God? He's all merciful. Well, then start showing it and let these poor buggers out of hell.
Pues sí que si Dios es muy misericordioso, ¿por qué a todas estas almas las vas a castigar por siempre hirviendo? No por un día o 100 años en una olla, sino por eternidad. Eso nos lleva a un principio de que el cristianismo también cree en la eternidad.
See, if you invent a lie for even a good purpose, it's going to backfire on you sooner or later. Just like you may teach a small child, your children want to run out, into the street or something like this. So along with telling them you get run over by one of these big green buses running around, might tell them, oh, if you do that, the boogeyman will get you or something is going to happen to you. And you'll tell them some lie to just get them to get under control, right? But then, it's like Santa Claus. What a lie. And children are fed this and say, oh, no, Santa Claus did it, Santa Claus did it, Santa Claus did it. There's no Santa Claus. The kids cry. I told my sister there was no Santa Claus when she was 6. I got a beating for it. Because in our family, we didn't tell you about reality until you were 7. I mean, it's a wonder children are suing their parents today, for leading them into all this crazy. Easter bunnies, Santa Claus, all this stuff. What has it got to do with anything? And then it's not true. So whenever you tell a lie, it can come back and bite you, so to speak, later.
En resumen es de que siempre que quieras echar una mentirita por una buena razón, tarde o temprano pues se va a regresar, ¿no?
So, for example, because Christianity, all these religions, they didn't have any actual idea of the soul. They said soul. It's actually, the soul is a book. It's a record book that God keeps, your soul. Oh, bad move. Big X. Oh, good move. Good check. And in the end, he tallies up the X's and the checks. The soul was not who you are. Now, in modern, there's a little bit of soul in the religion, but soul wasn't who you are. You are the body. That's why you can't cremate anybody. Then comes, you don't cremate in Christianity because when the resurrection comes, how God will resurrect you if you burn your body. It's a sin to cremate in Christianity because it's a body-conscious religion. God will raise you from the grave. And then hopefully we're all not old because most of us die when we're old, right? I'd like to be younger if I was going to live forever, and be a young angel flying around, not an old buzzard. No, but these are serious things. People raise questions. Here, let me give you another one. The thing, finally people said, wait a minute, you got to be baptized. That's the main thing. You have to be baptized, right? So baptism, since the time of John the Baptist and Jesus, was an adult activity, right? So then the question was, what happened to the little babies that died when they were 6 months old? The little children, the guy was 6 years old, he didn't get baptized yet. Where does he go? He couldn't go to hell. He didn't do anything bad, but he couldn't go to heaven because he wasn't baptized, right? So then they said, the babies go where?
Limbo.
Limbo. Guess what? The Pope pulled them all out of limbo 2 years ago and just passed a proclamation that all the babies in limbo can now go to heaven. Wow, what a Pope. What a Pope. This one guy, was he the one that retired?
Ratzinger. Yeah.
The one that retired. Yeah,
German
the one that
Ratzinger.
retired. What he was up to. He just freed all the babies. All the babies. You know how many babies there were that died and went to limbo from the time of Jesus till now? Millions. Child mortality was high. And they all went to limbo, but now he took them out of limbo. Well, who is this guy? And then he retires. What power? So finally, people are just they're rotting their heads over the baby thing. So the Pope says, okay, they're all free now. Go on. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie to end with. They didn't go to limbo. But see, it's a question that questions the mercifulness of God. Another question. Embarrassing answers can't be answered. So then another lie just to, now there is no question what happens. The children all went to heaven. The yoga system, bhakti-yoga, Krishna consciousness is not like that. It's not a system of lies just to control people. It's the search for the truth. The only difference between me and you is I'm a 50-year-old student in the classroom for 50 years, and you may be only in the classroom for a couple years or just beginning even more recent than that. That's the only difference. We're all students, not of dogma. We also have some dogmas. You could say they were dogmas. How many times you should wash your mouth after you eat and this and that. There's so many rules and there's rituals and everything. And those are just to fill in the activity. But what's important is the consciousness that's carried through each and every dogma or each and every ritual. If the consciousness is there, then it's actually not dogma anymore. It's not just ritual anymore. It's practice. It's putting into practice spiritual knowledge, spiritual consciousness in this material world to the best of our ability.
La conciencia de Krishna del Bhakti Yoga no es para una conciencia de cuerpo, de dogmas. Y bueno, sí decía Guru Maharaj, sí se aplican unos ciertos dogmas, se le puede llamar, cuántas veces tienes que lavar tu boca, bañarte y todo eso, pero todo depende de cómo es la conciencia que se aplica en cada cosa que estás haciendo. Eso es lo importante. No es como, son niveles, pasos y niveles que tenemos que seguir para poder llegar a algo. Es como algo viviente. Y decía antes que del cristianismo, muchas veces lo que pasa es que como se sigue una conciencia del cuerpo, pues no, es un pecado hasta quemar el cuerpo, porque cuando llegue el momento de la resurrección, pues cómo va a resucitar algo que está hecho cenizas, ¿no? Un punto que dio antes.
So I want to go back in the talk a little bit. We come to the senses and the ear, the hearing.
Regresando a lo que era de los sentidos y el escuchar.
Hearing, there are many things to hear in this world, many sounds to hear in this world, but there's a certain category of sounds. It's called Sapta Brahman. In Sanskrit, it's called Sapta Brahman. Brahman meaning that which is purely conscious or spiritual. Conscious sound vibration, spiritual sounds.
Que hablaba de escuchar, pero hay muchas cosas que hay que escuchar siempre, ¿no? Que se escuchan, muchos sonidos en el ambiente y todo, pero hay uno que es la vibración consciente espiritual.
So these spiritual sounds are good, so you can say are divided into two basic groups, mantras and sutras.
Estos sonidos espirituales se pueden dividir en dos categorías, que son los mantras y los sutras.
Mantras are to be repeated as in meditation,
Los mantras se repiten en meditación,
both silent and non-silent.
en silencio y sin silencio.
There's different types of meditation,
Hay diferentes tipos de meditación.
with the chanting of mantras out loud and the chanting of mantras internally without making any sound at all, just an internal.
Están los mantras que son permitidos para cantar un poco fuerte en voz alta y los otros sin hacer ningún sonido.
And sutras are concise statements that are super packed up with knowledge, and the sutras are meant to be heard and discussed amongst the students and the professors. And it's like, you know, these magic cereals or something, you just pour a little water on it, and all of a sudden fills up your bowl, it just expands. Understand?
Sí, los sutras son como un paquete de ciertas líneas o enunciados donde deben de ser hablados, pero a la vez discutidos también.
So in every age, there's a process for self-realization. In every age means universal ages. They're known as yugas.
En cada era, se refiere a era contándolo como universo, hay diferentes procesos que seguir.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up now, or it just goes on and on. But in the 4 ages, there are 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali Yuga. In each age, there's a different process for self-realization, for achieving transcendence, and a lot of this process has to do on your expansive life, how long you live, and the environment that we live in, favorable and progressively unfavorable, all the way to Kali Yuga, which is filled with pollution, intrigue, deception, criminality, bribery. Go to the dictionary, and every bad word you can think of, well, that's everywhere. Read the newspaper. What good news is there in a newspaper? There are no good news. Oh, every once in a while, a wedding, there's a little section, the wedding. That's it. That's all. That's the best news, you know. No other good news. All bad news.
Hablando de las 4 eras del universo, en cada era pues se sigue un diferente proceso, acuerdo a las circunstancias, porque ahorita estamos viviendo una era donde pues, todas las palabras feas que puedas encontrar en el diccionario están condensadas en eso. ¿Qué hay de nuevo en las noticias? Que sea positivo, que sea bueno. Si acaso puedes ver una línea de una boda, pero de ahí en fuera todo es negativo.
So in the Satya Yuga, meditation was the prescribed method of self-realization, and the average lifespan in a Satya Yuga is 100,000 years.
En Satya Yuga, que la primera era del universo, el proceso era la meditación y se vivía alrededor promedio de 100,000 años por persona vivían eso.
That seems unbelievable.
Eso suena increíble,
Could
¿no?
we be exaggerating here?
Podría ser exagerado.
Well, put that one on hold and then look at all the other ancient things laying around the world that are impossible today.
Pero dejamos tantito eso colgado y veamos en todas las cosas que suenan que eran imposibles, que están, ¿cómo se dice? Brotando, ¿no?
There are some exaggerations in the Vedic literatures, definitely. There are some exaggerations just to get the point across.
Sí, también hay unas exageraciones en puntos exagerados en la literatura védica solo para que agarremos el punto, ¿no? Que nos caiga.
Like you can read about the stories of different rishis and ancient yogis and stuff who had 64,000 disciples. Vishwamitra had 64,000 disciples. Agastya Muni had 64,000 disciples. Even we heard Bhaktisiddhanta had 64,000 disciples. Really? They all had 64,000? No. It's like you went to the festival, you went to Cervantino, you're from Guadalajara, you come back and somebody goes, how was the festival? Oh man, there was 1 million people there. Really? Did 1 million people come into Guanajuato for the festival? I don't think so. But that's an expression, like, there was a lot of people there. There was 1 million people there. It was like, oh, millions of thanks. Muchas gracias, millions of times. It's like, what? How you can do that? No, it's just an expression. So the Vedas has expressions, they're called alankars. And it's just to drive the point. You see, he had many disciples. There's these halls in India, in ancient India. I've seen many of them. And if you have a Brahmin from the temple, say, this is 1,000-pillar hall. And then you just count the pillars. There's not 1,000. Sometimes there's only 700. You know? They have 100-pillar, 500-pillar, and 1,000-pillar. It's just 1,000-pillar hall means there's a lot of pillars here. And it's more than the 500-pillar hall.
En sí, todas estas son expresiones exageradas, que ponían un ejemplo, ¿no? De que cuando el Cervantino y eres de Guadalajara y regresas a Guadalajara y dices, es que hubo millones de personas y el de Guadalajara, ¿en serio? Pero son unas formas de exagerar, de dar expresiones, ¿no? Y así dio varios ejemplos de que...
So the point is, in Satya Yuga, people did live a long time. Even in the biblical record, there's Methuselah lived 700 years, and there's all these people live a long time. So we have no way to prove, and you have no way to disprove this either. It's in a time loss to memory. But the Vedas have survived. And they are the oldest books on the planet Earth, and they speak of these things. Longevity. So anyway, back to the Satya Yuga, you have a long life, this particular style of meditation, which isn't even being taught anywhere today anyway, but you have a long time because it takes a long lifetime through this process to fully control the senses, focus the mind, and realize the absolute truth. It's pretty much, for our age, it's an impossible. Maybe you feel good. Definitely a little meditation. Even special forces meditate before they go in and kill people. So what is the purpose of meditation? Is it just to calm yourself? And the Navy SEALs do pranayama. This age, it's not possible to meditate. In Kali Yuga, very short lives, with more hassles from the environment, the politics, the food we eat, the medicine we take is killing us. All this very troubled time. So a similar process that everyone can take part in. And that's chanting the Mahā-mantra. It's called Sankirtan. Congregational, gathering together with friends and family and chanting the Mahā-mantra.
Entonces, así que como resumen, hablaba que del Satya Yuga, en Satya Yuga se proveía de una vida más larga, pero decía un punto de que no hay forma de probarlo, pero tampoco hay una forma de desaprobarlo, ¿no? Porque viene de los Vedas y los Vedas se siguen hablando todavía. Pero entonces se daba esa larga vida también porque el proceso de la meditación te va llevando un poco de controlar los sentidos, enfocar tu mente y poco a poco llevar esa meditación muy larga para realizar la verdad absoluta. Todo lo contrario ahorita Kali Yuga, que es muy difícil el poder realizar ese tipo de meditación. Sí, tal vez, dice, puedes meditar, puedes sentirte bien, y incluso hasta hay otros que ya meditan, ¿no? Como las fuerzas especiales de Estados Unidos, cuando van a bajar de los helicópteros, están realizando pranayamas y todo, y que vio hasta un video de Hillary Clinton, que es prácticamente una bruja, que ya enseña cómo hacer pranayamas. Pero en Kali Yuga se simplifica todo de una forma un poco más fácil, el cantar de una forma congregacional, con familia, amigos, el Mahā-mantra.
Now there are many mantras, but they're all not the same. That's why that particular mantra, if you know anything of the Sanskrit, is called the Mahā-mantra, the great mantra. Maha means, that's like the mega. It's the mega mantra, Mahā-mantra. What's that other word they use today? It means really big or something. Anyway.
Y hay muchos mantras, pero está el Mahā-mantra, que es como... Maha se refiere a algo grande, es como el mega mantra.
So other mantras don't have that potency that the Mahā-mantra.
Otros mantras no tienen esa potencia que el Mahā-mantra tiene.
Similarly, in some mantras, they're not even meant for spiritual gain at all. What is the one we were discussing the other day? Remember, from Nepal, and it's on one of the Om Padme.
Om Mani Padme Hum.
Yeah, Mani Padme Hum. Has nothing to do with spiritual life. It's all about gaining wealth.
Que hay unos mantras que solamente son para ganancia de riqueza, como el Om
What is it
Padme Hum.
again? Om.
Mani Padme Hum.
Maybe I should chant that a little bit.
Tal vez voy a cantar un poquito ese.
Yeah. So that mantra was for sale in the 60s and 70s in Estados Unidos. It was like back then it was $400 to get initiated into that mantra, and the whole pitch was it will increase your prosperity, your wealth, your name, your fame. But the problem is these mantras, although true, it may, if they're done wrong or you're not following all the rules while you chant that mantra, it can have the opposite effect.
Sí, que los mantras se pueden seguir y todo, pero también si no lo cantas apropiado o un poco desviado, puedes tener el efecto opuesto.
There are mantras even to cause people to die.
Hay mantras para causar la muerte a alguien.
Tantric mantras.
Los mantras tántricos.
That's not what we're talking about here.
No es de lo que estamos
We're not
hablando aquí.
interested in those things.
No estamos interesados en esas cosas.
We're interested in spiritual being, spiritual prosperity, spiritual evolution, spiritual realization.
En realidad, estamos interesados en realización espiritual sobre todo.
So the nature of the Mahā-mantra is, even if you chant it wrong, you will have a good result.
E incluso el Mahā-mantra, si lo cantas mal, no es que vas a tener un mal resultado,
But your progress will be slow.
pero tu progreso será muy lento.
Even if you do something diabolically wrong against the mantra, it's called namaparad. It will first have a negative reaction and then a positive reaction.
Incluso si haces una Namaparad, que es una ofensa a ese nombre, vas a tener como inmediatamente algo negativo, pero después viene ya algo positivo.
There are many instances where rishis have, somebody has done the wrong thing and even criticized the groups of people who were cultivating spiritual knowledge. And then in the next life, they themselves became saints. Saints in the sense of great yogis, great mystics and whatnot.
Si criticas a los santos, ¿o cómo es?
Ha habido casos en que, aun cuando critiques a un yogi, a un guru, no a un sadhu, en esta vida quizás tengas una reacción mala, pero después tú mismo te conviertes en un estudiante de...
In our universe, I'm talking universe here in terms of the Vedic Puranic stories, the primero yogi, the top saint, sage, rishi yogi is Narada Muni.
En este universo, como el pináculo de todos los yogis, el mero mero, se le llama Narada Muni.
I don't know if there's any Hindu in all of India, which is about 700 million of them, hasn't heard of Narada Muni.
Y no estoy seguro si todos esos 700 millones de yogis han escuchado
Sí,
en
sí,
India.
ellos no han escuchado.
No han escuchado acerca de Narada Muni.
Mainly because he's in all the comic books for kids. Narada Muni is like the superhero.
Narada Muni está como en las caricaturas, en los cómics, como un superhéroe.
But then he's in the more serious literature also.
Pero también está en la parte de literatura más seria.
When I say serious literature, I mean histories of self-realization.
Cuando se refiere a seriedad, es en las historias de la autorrealización.
But he began his career by criticizing those who were searching after the truth.
Pero su carrera empieza cuando empezó a criticar a aquellos buscadores de la verdad.
And then in his next life, he became the person who we now know as Narada Muni.
Y en su siguiente vida, él se convierte en la persona que ahorita conocemos como Narada Muni.
But in his previous life, he performed offenses.
Pero en sus vidas previas cometió ofensas.
He verbally attacked and criticized the Sankirtan.
Él verbalmente atacó el Sankirtan.
Prahlad is another one,
Prahlad es otro.
the great Prahlad Maharaj.
El
He
great
didn't make a verbal offense, he made a physical offense.
el Prahlad Maharaja hizo una ofensa física.
And the stories go on.
Y las historias van y van.
So that's the nature of the absolute. When the absolute is contacted, even wrongly, it will have a good result for you in the next life. Maybe not in this life. Maybe that's like, yeah, you're going to have to deal with that. But ultimately, that word satyameva jayate, the truth or the good will prevail, not the bad. Even those who are offenders.
Incluso si cometes algo en esta vida, la verdad o lo bueno siempre va a prevalecer para la siguiente vida y te va a posicionar en algo que te ayude.
People should think the world has existed for, now they've proved there have been people walking on the earth for tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, some speculation saying millions of years there's been human, intelligent life on this earth.
Y, pensemos en eso, cómo ahorita se ha estado probando que la humanidad ha habido pasando sobre esta tierra desde hace 10,000, 100,000 millones de años, unos hasta se
The
dice.
history of their salvation goes back 2,000 years and that's it.
La historia de la salvación empezó desde hace 2,000 años y ya es todo.
There are still towns and villages in the world, in Tibet, in China, and all over the world. Never heard of Jesus. Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Es en pueblos, villitas allá por el Tíbet, por otros lados los Himalayas, que ni siquiera han escuchado acerca de Jesús.
But God created everyone with one life and one chance. That's loaded dice. You know what I mean? That's a stacked deck. You've got one life, and it just so happens you're all born, and I created you, and you're all over the place, and I haven't even sent Jesus to save you yet, so you're all doomed. One life,
Ni tienen
that's it.
oportunidad porque todas esas personas nacieron antes de que llegue Jesús y como dicen en el cristianismo, ¿no? Que solo tienes una vida y ya, pues ya ni tienen oportunidad porque antes de que llegó Jesús pues ya vivieron y murieron.
Ah, ok. Ujú.
So some may say, well, you know, this chanting, Mahā-mantra, all this stuff, this is very, 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 very new in the Western world. Yeah, I say yes, but everybody who lived here thousands of years ago is living somewhere again, and again, and again, and again. Reincarnation. It's not like you were born once and that's it.
No es que...
You're born again and again and again and again and millions of times. Actually, they say you've been a human being hundreds of millions of times. You've been a king, you've been a queen, you've been even up to a demigod. And still you are not satisfied because you have not searched after the absolute truth. And that alone is fulfilling. And when we reach that, then we are no more for this world of samsara. Then we are for Goloka. Goloka means the spiritual world.
Y pues muchas veces pensamos que Sankirtan es muy nuevo y todo eso, pero la verdad es que siempre hemos estado naciendo y naciendo y naciendo y nos lleva a lo que es la reencarnación y se dice que ya hemos estado como reyes, reinas, como esto, aquello en diferentes cuerpos, hasta en semidioses, pero estás insatisfecho y no estás como completo en tu búsqueda de la verdad. Hasta que no llegue ese momento y lo realices, es cuando ya vas a salirte de este círculo del samsara, que es el de nacimiento y muerte, y vas a pasar a Goloka, que se refiere al mundo espiritual.
I was just remembering my mother.
Me estaba recordando a mi mamá.
When she was 93, I went to see her in Florida.
Cuando tenía 93 años, la fui a ver en Florida.
You know, when you get up to 93, it's like you wake up every morning and pinch yourself to see if you're still there. You know, at 93, you're not looking like, yeah, in 30 years, I think I'll, you know, nah. You're thinking
Cuando
like,
estás en los
day
90.
by day.
En los 93 años ya estás pensando día con día, ¿no? Ya pensando, despiertas y ya no es como, en 30 años voy a hacer esto, ya despiertas y te picas a ver si estás vivo todavía.
Go to the church this Sunday and see how many old people were in the church. Mostly old people.
Veamos en las iglesias, echamos un vistazo y la mayoría es gente vieja.
Young boys and girls, especially young men and women, you know, in their late teens, early 20s. Forget it.
No hay chamacos de 18, 19, 20. No hay,
Because old people begin to worry about it. They say, well, you know, I better do the right thing here.
porque ya viejo te empiezas a preocupar de que, hijo, mejor voy a hacer algo bueno. Ya te vas a la iglesia.
So I told my mother, I said, death is just moving from this life to the next life.
Y le dije a mi mamá, bueno, la muerte solo te mueve de un lado a otro a la siguiente vida.
I said, you've been here many times before,
Tú has estado aquí muchas veces antes
and you'll be back again.
y vas a estar de nuevo por aquí otra
And
vez.
she thought that was good because she loved to drink rum. And she was probably thinking, oh, good. How soon till I can have another glass? So, but, you know, and these other, you know, I said religions, there's a lot of doomsday there. You better get this right this time, my dear, here. You can burn forever. So you can start with giving us your property, giving us your money, sign over your will to the church, and God will bless you, you know.
Y en estos tiempos también se maneja más bien de que la iglesia te dice, ya deberías de ponerte a hacer algo bueno porque si no vas a quemarte por la eternidad en el infierno, mejor danos tus propiedades, fírmalo y ya Dios te va a bendecir.
Remember, these are the same people that in the medieval period of time were selling those indulgences. We talked about this the other day. You know, indulgences. And one of them, the Pope nixed it, was this indulgence will save you even if you rape the mother of God. And even the Pope said, oh, that's pushing it a little too far. But you could pay for murder, rape, even killing a priest. These are, look it up, the indulgences. They still listen. You can see old pictures of these pieces of paper. You could pay for these sins. Even if you haven't done them yet, you could just buy one, and the next time the priest pissed you off, you could just do him in and give the paper, you're free from sin.
Como la otra vez estaba hablando de esos, ¿cómo se les llama?
Indulgencias.
Indulgencias. de que te daban de que podías robar en nombre de Dios, todo, y eras como perdonado. Pero llegó un punto donde ya se hizo una indulgencia de que, puedes ya hasta, ¿qué fue?
Hasta violar.
Violar a la madre de Dios, y ya el papá, no, pues qué onda, ¿no? ¿Qué más?
Pero también, aun cuando no lo hubieras hecho, si después lo hacías, ya estabas perdonado.
So, just for your information, the Antichrist, you've heard of the Antichrist?
¿Han escuchado el anticristo?
Everybody you talk to, the Antichrist has been declared as Eastern religion.
El anticristo se ha declarado como la religión oriental.
A few years ago, Hare Krishna used to be high on the list, but now yoga popularity has grown so much that it's very high on the list, if not at the top, of anti-Christian activity. And the Pope has recently prohibited anybody in the church, monks or any of these people, from doing yoga and doing meditation, anything outside who was the theologian who had the philosophy, not Aristotle, what is his name? He copied the Greek philosophy and...
Oh, Thomas Aquinas?
Thomas Aquinas, yeah. Thomas Aquinas had some styles of meditation which he borrowed from the Greeks, and that's as far as you can go with it.
Yeah.
Yoga is totally out.
Ya el yoga ha sido prohibida, es como es el pináculo de lo prohibido en la religión católica, porque no es permitido hacer como posiciones, meditación, y de hecho había Tomás de Aquino, llevaba un cierto sistema de meditación él.
So,
Tomás de Aquino.
I've had many friends over the years who were, I guess, Christian. They considered themselves Christian and everything. But they seemed quite limited in their understanding.
Que debe tener muchos amigos que son cristianos, pero es muy limitado su entendimiento.
Anyway, the purpose is not to beat up on somebody who has a lesser understanding. You might say, well, all these people are well-intended. Yes, well-intended. They mean good. Some of them, at least, we would hope, type of a thing. But if we look back in history, these things weren't there at the time. They weren't there. They simply weren't there. The Jews weren't there. Muslims are only 1,500 years old. Muhammad and all of that. There was a time where civilization and humanity existed for, now it's being proven, hundreds of thousands of years, and these modern day religions weren't there. But guess who was there? The yoga system was there since the day the world began. You can find those stories in detail. Lord Brahma, the first one to meditate, the first one to realize the absolute truth. What a story that is. And that goes back to the creation of the universe, actually before the planets are even created.
Pero no se tome esto como que se está tratando de poner el dedo sobre algo, ¿no? Sobre un tipo de religión o cristianismo, lo que sea, sino simplemente es que estas religiones, los musulmanes tienen como 1500 años de antigüedad, y mucho antes de eso ha habido más cosas. ¿Y qué creen que había antes de todo eso? El sistema de yoga. El yoga, de hecho, empezó desde que se cree este mundo. De hecho, hasta antes que se crearan estos planetas ya estaba eso. Todo va hasta atrás con el señor Brahma y todo eso. Entonces son pruebas fuertes.
So when our guru first came to the United States, when Prabhupada first came in 1965, he was very clear that this is not a religion. This is not another religion.
Cuando nuestro guru Śrīla Prabhupada llega a los Estados Unidos, tenía muy claro en mente, esta no es otra religión impuesta.
It is sometimes called Sanatan Dharma,
Algunas veces se le llama Sanatan Dharma,
which means the eternal function of all living beings.
que significa la función eterna de todas las entidades vivientes.
All living beings.
Todas las entidades
All
vivientes.
things alive.
Todas las cosas vivas.
This is another big difference between contemporary religion and the yoga system is we're not the only ones that matter. The animals also matter. The birds. Everything matters. All life matters. And all life is evolving towards spiritual liberation or spiritual enlightenment.
No es como que sea, somos los únicos, no, simplemente es todo envuelve a todo, todas las cuestiones vivientes, todos los pájaros, los perros, los animales, todo, y todo se va dando gradualmente hacia un camino espiritual.
If you analyze the symptoms of life, and then you look at all living things, they also bear these symptoms. They're born, they reproduce, almost all of them, and mostly in a male-female, even insects, birds. It's not like only humans have male and female. Then it gets really complicated for certain plants are both male and female and all this kind of stuff. And amoebas kind of split themselves in half and worms can cut in half and go in two different directions and everything. But they all exhibit the symptoms of life, including death.
Si podemos ver cómo la vida exhibe síntomas similares, porque hay reproducción, hay nacimiento, muerte, casi en todo lo que vemos. Aún nos es más complejo, pero podemos ver en los animales, en los pájaros, cómo también son femeninos y masculinos. En algunas plantas es más difícil, así es un poco más complejo, pero siempre está ese síntoma de vida.
Once I was arguing with somebody about being a vegetarian, and they said, I forget what their argument was, but they said, no, it's all right to, I think we were just talking about chickens. Eat chickens. And I said, well, I don't think the chicken agrees. And they go, cut my head. As soon as you grab that sucker, man, there he goes. Then they want to run. And bigger animals cry. Actually cry. Cows, horses, even dogs, when they are going to put them down, they call it put them down. If you don't claim them from the dog place, they put them to sleep. They call it put them to sleep. And most of the time, these animals don't perceive what's going on, but in the cage, they're admittedly sad. Tigers and things, all these animals in cages, they feel just like you. Stick you in a cage. How do you feel?
They get depressed.
Yeah, they get depressed. Then they give them Prozac and stuff to boost them up a bit, but yeah, they do. They have to give drugs to the animals in the zoo to keep them perked up so the tourists are happy.
Una vez estaba discutiendo con un amigo acerca del vegetarianismo y estaba hablando de los pollos, pero el punto es de que el pollo no corre, ya me vas a matar, pues sí, échale, ¿no? Dame machetazo, siempre corren, pero hay animales más grandes, como por ejemplo la vaca, los caballos, que hasta lloran, ¿no? E incluso no es de que el animal esté percibiendo más allá de todas las cosas, pero simplemente si los pones en una jaula o en el zoológico, percibes fácilmente que están tristes o están sufriendo, y para eso pues ya le ponen medicinas.
So consciousness is there, even in the animals, even in the plants. There is a famous Bengali scientist. You can see his machine. He proved and set up a machine that would observe plants and prove that they had feelings. And he did different things to plants. He'd have a nice guy come and give water, turn on the fan and blow a little breeze and pick off the dead leaves and just treat the plant nice. And then he had other guys that would come in and break the branches of the bush, slap it around, just abuse the plant. And then it came to a point when the good guy walked into the rooms, the plants were like chilling, And the bad guy walked in the room, they go, oh, here comes the guy again. He's going to tear some branches off. They could pick up these, the machine, they've developed it a lot more now, but that machine is in a museum in Calcutta. He's a Bose, right?
Jagdish Chandra Bose.
Jagdish Chandra Bose. You can look him up on the internet. Proving that plants have a sentient being about themselves.
Entonces, la conciencia está en todo, ¿no? En los animales, en las plantas. Incluso para probar esto de las plantas, un científico de Bengal estuvieron observando unas plantas y se acercaba una persona, lo regaba con cariño, le quitaba las hojas secas con mucho cariño, y otro llegaba y abusaba de la planta, ¿no? Le cortaba las cosas así feo. Y se decía que cuando llegaba el buen trato, pues la planta como que se sentía a gusto y le coqueteaba, ¿no? Y la otra se sentía como luego como irritada y choqueada.
So all living beings, where consciousness is present, where you can perceive consciousness, and there's even places we can't even perceive it, but it's there.
Cuando luego se puede percibir la conciencia, pero hay en algunos lugares donde no se puede incluso percibir que hay conciencia ahí.
In the Vedic idea, even mountains and stones have consciousness.
En el ideal védico, que las piedras y las montañas también tienen conciencia.
And there are certain types of stone, like marble and crystal. It grows. It grows just like a root of a plant.
Como unos cristales, algunos. El mármol está probado que crecen.
Have you seen the crystal mines in? I think it's in Sonora, in northern Mexico. They discovered by accident. They got wow, and it's just like growing for hundreds of millions of years. It grows. So growing, is a symptom of consciousness.
Como en Sonora.
Whatever the level of it is, it's considered it's a proof of consciousness.
Una prueba de conciencia es de que cuando las cosas están creciendo, esa es una prueba de conciencia, como en Sonora hay unos cristales que descubrieron que están creciendo.
So we live in very interesting times. There's many revolutions going on right now in the world. Some of them are violent and they are politically oriented and things like that, but there's also a spiritual revolution going on in the world today.
Hay muchas revoluciones ahorita en este mundo, en el ahora, que se están dando. Hay la política, hay la... ¿Qué otra fue?
La revolución espiritual.
Pero hay otras que son la revolución espiritual.
And our two weapons are knowledge and brotherhood.
Y nuestras armas son el conocimiento y la hermandad.
Now, this revolution is going on in many, many spheres of influence, and I can't help but mention the scientific community. There's a tremendous revolution going on in science today.
Hay una revolución tremenda ahorita en la cuestión de la comunidad científica.
And at the head of that revolution is a scientist. He's a biologist. What's his name again?
Robert Lanza.
Robert Lanza. Please look him up. Robert Lanza. And the theory of biocentrism. It's a theory that he has put forward from the biological studies.
Hay un científico que está a la cabeza de la comunidad científica que se llama Robert Lanza, que por favor busquen de él. Es que está probando todo el biocentrismo.
And that theory, in summary, is that consciousness existed before matter.
Y lo que está tratando de probar es que la teoría existe. La teoría es que la conciencia está antes que la materia.
The cause is consciousness. The effect is the universe.
Porque debido a la conciencia, el efecto ha sido el universo.
Now, he happens to be not just a scientist with a real cool theory, he happens to be the leading clone scientist of the world. In other words, he grows three-headed goats in his spare time inside glass jars.
Que
Clone artist.
No es como un científico nada más chido, ¿no? De que está inventando teorías, sino también está probando cómo esto todo de la clonación, ¿cómo dijo?
Es uno de los más fuertes científicos en el área de clonación. Y en su tiempo libre hace chivas de pescados.
Ajá.
He's also the leading stem cell therapist in the world.
¿Qué es
Y
eso?
el líder en la terapia de células madres.
Células madres.
Yeah, the cells from the mother.
Yeah.
So he's a highly educated scientist, and he says, without a doubt, consciousness created the universe.
Ese es un científico muy educado y él dice que la conciencia se va hacia el universo, a la materia.
He had a recent article, I don't know if we published that in our magazine, The Illusion of Death.
Tiene un artículo que se llama La ilusión de la muerte.
Only the body dies, consciousness cannot be destroyed.
Solo la muerte, el cuerpo muere, la conciencia no puede morir.
And so he was asked, well, we can see there's all these conscious beings. Is there a universal consciousness?
Y entonces, podemos ver todas estas, se le preguntaba, todas estas entidades conscientes, pero ¿hay una conciencia universal?
And his answer was yes.
Y su respuesta fue claro, sí.
Then the ultimate question came.
Y la última pregunta llegó.
Is that universal consciousness a person?
¿Esa conciencia universal es una persona?
And his answer was yes.
Y su respuesta fue sí.
He's one of the top scientists in the world today. And since he came out with his theory about 8 or 9 years ago, there is not a respectable scientific institute, research institute in the world that doesn't have a department now to study consciousness, all because of Dr. Lanza. He defeated everybody. The opening chapter of his book says everything you have learned about science is wrong because the premise is wrong. Matter did not evolve to life. Life created matter.
Y ha derrotado a todas esas instituciones y centros científicos muy elaborados porque les ha dicho que está mal todo. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos piensan que todo emana de la materia y todas las bases pues no están basadas en eso, como él decía, es la conciencia.
So I thought
cada escuela, universidad, cualquier lugar, ya dediquen un departamento a la conciencia.
So I thought, okay, this guy must have some connection to something outside, beyond the Bible at least. He's a Catholic, by the way.
Entonces yo me puse a pensar, este hombre ha de tener una conexión más allá de la Biblia solamente, ¿no? Pero
But first he's a scientist.
primero que nada es un científico, pero es católico.
And I could find no connection to Buddhism, Vedas, Upanishads, this Rishi, that Yogi, Maharishi, you name him, anybody, nothing. He stays so clear from any kind of anything except pure science. His arguments, his observations, everything he puts forward is just based on honest, pure science.
Y empecé a ver si tenía conexión con budistas, algo de yoga, rishis, maha, quién sabe qué y todo. Y no, él se mantiene como alejado de eso, pero su principio que él mantiene es honesta ciencia pura.
So this has created quite a, stir, I like to say, revolution inside the science community and physics and all these things.
Es el comienzo de una revolución en la comunidad científica.
And there are other scientists. India has a huge amount of highly intelligent people. They work in all the space programs around the world. They work for the French. They work for the British. They work for the Estados Unidos. They're in NASA. They're everywhere. Highly intelligent people, physicists, biologists, doctors. You get a phone book in the United States and look at Dr. Patel, Dr. Shah, Dr. Patel, Dr. Ashok, Dr. Where's the Americanos? It's like they're highly intelligent people. They're the best students when they go to university. They don't party. They just study. They're always in the top of their class. And many of these people are in their scientific presentations of consciousness and physics in the universe. They bring in the Upanishads, they bring in the Vedas, they bring in the Yoga Sutras as evidence of this knowledge having existed since ancient times.
India tiene de las más elevadas inteligencias de hombres, ¿no? Que hay, hombres y mujeres. Pero casi todos ellos están desarrollando en las bases de los cuestiones científicas desarrolladoras como los franceses, alemanes, americanos, en la NASA, están en todos lados. Y siempre cuando presentan algo también lo relacionan con los Vedas, con los Upanishads, los Sutras, etc.
But just so you make no mistake about it, there's a verse in one of these ancient books called the Bhagavatam. It says, from the highest to the lowest of living beings, and all levels in between, it's talking about consciousness. All of them are present in India. All of them. There's cannibals in India. There's people who still do human sacrifice in India. There are great physicists and scientists and doctors and neurosurgeons, and there's this everything, there's great musicians, poets, it's everything, everything from the lowest to the highest and everything in between. India is the prototype. And you'll see a piece of India here, and a piece of India there, and a certain mentality of India there, and spread, but it's all in India.
Y en el Śrīla Narasiṅgha, un libro que está ahí, se menciona que hay especies desde lo más bajo hasta lo más elevado de entidades vivientes. E India tiene como todo eso, porque está desde hay mucho canibalismo, hay sacrificios humanos, hay hasta los grandes científicos, los físicos. India es como un buen prototipo de todo eso.
But then I can point there and say, the Vedas says, padam padam yadvi padam natesham. This is a dangerous world we live in. There is danger at every step.
Que los Vedas dicen en este sloka en sánscrito que cada paso que das en este mundo hay peligro.
All right, so we'll go on with the Mahā-mantra now. Some kirtan, then prasadam. I think you said you were speaking with somebody the other day that was asking what is our program here. First, we like to have lengthy discussions, right? And we really welcome questions. If you have questions, questions stimulate the conversation.
Siempre son bienvenidas las preguntas y son bienvenidas y para estimular
La conversación.
la conversación.
Okay, wait, let me just finish this part. Then we do Sankirtan. Sankirtan is the congregational chanting of the Mahā-mantra.
Después se hace el Sankirtan, que es el canto en congregación del Mahā-mantra.
Then we take Krishna Prasadam.
Después tomamos lo que es la Krishna Prasadam.
All three of these processes are part of the bhakti-yoga process.
Esas tres partes son parte del proceso del bhakti-yoga.
There are basically 9 stages. We won't get into that, or we'll just be talking about
Hay 9
now.
como etapas, no
But
vamos
these
a
are
entrar a
3 of
eso,
the very important ones.
pero estos son muy importantes.
So remember I said people are suffering, they have disease, they have suffering. What they put in their mouth, what they eat and digest can be attributed to many of the health issues that people face today.
Como todo lo que se le pone al estómago y todo eso de problemas de salud, pues eso es lo que le estás metiendo a tu cuerpo.
So we want to eat something that is tasty and which is healthy and which is also spiritual. That which has a spiritual value also.
También, entonces, ¿qué es lo que se hace? Algo saboreable, saludable y algo que sea espiritual.
So prasadam means spiritual food.
Prasadam significa comida espiritual.
Food for the body and the consciousness, both.
Comida para el cuerpo y también para la conciencia.
There are many stories in the Puranas related to what people ate. This person ate the wrong thing, cooked by the wrong people, and developed a demoniac or evil mentality.
Hay historias en los Puranas donde cocinado por la persona equivocada, ingredientes equivocados, entonces la mentalidad se convierte en algo demoníaco.
Another person in a particular story in the Puranas who had no spiritual inclination at all. They were a prince. They wanted many beautiful girls in the harem. They wanted wealth and prosperity. They had spirituality. They wanted to enjoy life, but they ate the food cooked by a self-realized person, and over time they themselves rose out of that lower mode of interest, just the material pleasures, and began to inquire about higher existence.
También está la otra parte de la persona que no está interesada en nada espiritual, como eso queda de lado, que quiere solo el disfrute de mujeres, de comida, de riqueza, pero llega el momento donde prueban cosas que fueron cocinadas por una persona autorrealizada, entonces empieza a despertar como esa búsqueda.
All right, so thank you very much for listening so patiently. Oh, you had a question.
Sí, Maharaj.
If it's easier, better, you can express it in Spanish.
Que si es más fácil, me lo expreso en español y ya.
Se explica que en un principio, ¿no? En los Vedas se explica que se crearon las 8.400.000 especies de vida de manera simultánea.
In the Vedas it's explained that it was created
Sí.
de 8 millones.
8,400,000
species.
Simultáneamente.
Simultaneously.
No,
No.
no. There's it's even said that Darwin borrowed his theory of evolution from the Vedas, which describe life, when it finally gets down to, okay, the planets are created, and it starts from nothing. It starts from what's called the Brahmajyoti, then Pradhana, then the Mahatattva, then it just progressively comes all the way down to all the senses, sense objects, the interaction between them, all the species, and it starts with the lower species, I believe. And the category is a little different than we have today of categorizing species, but there are the aquatics, the reptiles, the birds,
Insects.
insects. Insects are, I think, lower than the birds. And then four-legged animals, then two-legged animals, and then humans, then demigods, and different types of humans. And they are one after the other after the other. And many things existed here before the humans came. And when they say there was life on Earth for maybe some long time, and then humans evolved, that doesn't really stick. Evolved from what? Monkeys, right? We all evolved from monkeys. So, but according to the Vedic thing, each species is created at different times, and the time between them, we haven't bothered to try to figure that out. But my assumption is it's vast. Not like created one like all done in 7 days, and on the seventh day God took a siesta. No, it evolved, and God didn't do it anyway. Brahma did it. Brahma is the creator. He's endowed with creative potency, and he creates planets and then different species of life. When it comes down to the humans, the Prajapatis, who are a higher species of like demigod-like, they're not demigods, they're their own category. They come to Earth, they come to various planets, and they're the ones that seed human life on this Earth and in other places in the universe, according to Puranic and Vedic histories. So, one by one, over maybe millions and millions of years on Earth, before the humans even arrived. So it's not that everything science has thought and discovered is totally wrong, but the premise is wrong. That matter has created all these species. You know how many species of life there are just on this hill out here? Man, there's creepy crawlers everywhere. And some of them kill you. Snakes, poisonous, this, and all the... And we're in the process of destroying life on this earth, not increasing it. Thousands of species don't exist anymore.
También cuando el alma cae del Brahmayoti, when the soul falls from the Brahmayoti, su cuerpo que toma en un principio es también un cuerpo superior, ¿no? No es, sí, lógicamente no es un cuerpo inferior, ¿verdad? When the soul takes a body,
Sí,
sí.
lo estoy entendiendo. Dice.
But
What
you-
kind of body takes the soul when it falls from the Brahmayoti?
Say it again?
Que cuando, when the soul falls from the Brahma Yoti, is in a superior body.
¿Qué clase de cuerpo?
Or
Which-
what type of body this is okay.
Well, there are some differences of opinion or some different statements on that raise certain questions. One of the statements is, okay, this raises the whole issue. Where do you come from? Originally. Where does this all begin? How did we get in this world of death and suffering when our constitutional nature is eternal, blissful? How did we get in this situation? Where did we come from? What's our purpose now that we're here? All these questions arise. So he's asking from a particular point of when you begin, first time in the world, first time, right? First time. How do you begin? There are 8,400,000 different species. And the answer is you begin really high up on the scale, not low. You don't begin as an insect and work your way up. You begin in the heavenly planets, what's called the higher planets of the universe, Brahmaloka, as a demigod, or even Brahma himself, it's sometimes said. And then due to your involvement in the material world of karma, action, and reaction, you slowly come down the ladder. And it's not so bad going all the way down to human life, but after that, it gets pretty tough. When you see an animal, you have been that animal. You have been a cat, you have been a dog, been a horse, been a cow, been an elephant, been a saber-toothed tiger. You've been one of these species, not once. The Vedas says you've been in each species millions of times. And then you come around to the human form of life again. You go through all these species, up and down, up and down, up and down, until you reach enlightenment.
Entonces aquí está llegando a preguntas donde está sacando una pregunta, pero donde te lleva otras preguntas, ¿no? De quiénes somos, dónde vamos y cómo fue que llegamos a este punto de tomar este cuerpo desde la primera vez, ¿no? Y de las 8.400.000 especies de vida que existen, pues hemos pasado por todas para tomar cuerpo humano. Y no sé qué iba a decir algo. Y Pero no es de que empieces desde la forma más baja, ¿no? Sino empiezas desde la posición de semidios y de ahí empieza como la escalera.
Hasta dice que
De la más
podría
alta.
ser Brahma.
Ajá,
Podríamos
podríamos haber sido Brahma y de ahí hasta llevas hasta una forma donde ya llegas a la de humano. Pero ya, y de ahí dice, no está tan mal. Pero el detalle es que cuando ya de humano vas otra vez para abajo a las otras especies, tienes que dar otra vez todo el ciclo para volver a llegar a ser humano. Y podemos ver animales, podemos ver bichitos, gusanos, y ya hemos estado muchas millones de veces en esas formas.
So, when you get into, well, what causes this is the law of karma. Action and reaction.
Y el punto es de que ¿qué causa todo esto? Es la acción y la reacción, el karma.
Good action takes you up.
Buena acción te lleva arriba.
Bad action pulls you down.
Mala acción te jala para abajo.
In previous 3 ages, if you thought about killing someone, you got the karma of killing that person, just by thinking about it.
En las eras previas, si pensabas en matar a alguien, te daba un karma luego.
In Kali Yuga, one is not responsible karmically for their thoughts.
En Kali Yuga uno no es responsable por tener pensamientos.
I mean, practically everybody's thought of killing somebody, right? Or the dog that won't shut up barking, you know, they're not killing that dog. I was saying when we first came here, that dog's lucky I'm a vegetarian. I'm telling you. But in Kali Yuga, you're not karmically liable unless you carry out an action. Thinking about it,
En Kali Yuga, por pensar cosas, no vas a tener una reacción, pero sí por el actuar.
however, if you think of something good, you get the credit for that.
Sin embargo, si piensas algo bueno, sí hay el crédito para eso.
For example, there's a story of when Krishna appeared, Nanda Maharaj mentally gave in charity. He was in a prison. Vasudev, sorry. Vasudev mentally distributed cows in charity and gave gifts to the Brahmin. He couldn't do it, he was in chains. But when his son was born, he mentally did this. So if you mentally do good things, you get good results from that. But bad things, no, you don't get charged for that.
Entonces, Vasudev estaba en la cárcel
Estaba encarcelado, encadenado cuando nació su hijo.
y tuvo buenos pensamientos de cuando nace su hijo, distribuyendo cosas hacia los vaqueros, a las vaquitas y todo. Entonces, el punto es de que cuando tienes pensamientos positivos, siempre está el crédito en eso.
And there's another, just an interesting point that when you start to discuss karma and what gives good karma or bad karma, it's like, well, who can, does anybody create karma?
Entonces, cuando uno se entra a la discusión de karma, buen karma, mal karma, ¿quién crece karma?
Do you know how many boys in the modern world have taken a magnifying glass and the sun and burned an ant?
¿Cuántos niños
While the girls were playing with dolls, the boys were out burning ants.
¿Cuántos niños han tomado la lupa y han quemado con el sol a alguna hormiga? Bueno, las mujeres a las muñecas, ¿no?
Sometimes children can be absolutely ruthless, especially the boys, killing frogs or just shooting birds with a slingshot or, all these things.
Los niños luego
So
somos
do they get a karma?
muy maldosos en matar ranas, en darle con la resortera a los pájaros y estás generando una reacción kármica.
Well, according to Manu Samhita and other dialogues in the Vedas on karma, the answer is no. Not until they're 12 or 13. 13 years of age.
Entonces, de acuerdo al Manu Samhita, no se crea karma hasta que tienes tus 13 años.
But in human society, in the old system, a person is supposed to know the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, by the time they're 13. But at age 6, 5, they can't. That's how some of these kids end up killing each other when they're little kids. They see TV, boom, boom, boom. They just take a gun, shoot their little sister or something like that. It happens in Estados Unidos. It happens all the time. All the time. Almost every day. Kids are killing each other by accident or intentionally because they don't know what killing is. So they're not responsible, karmic. But at the age of 13, it's considered that Well, as you really didn't pay attention, you should know what's good and bad, what's harmful to someone, what creates pain. And so prior to that, no one commits any karma.
Antes de los 13 años no se comete ningún karma porque no es como consciente el niño de que esta es bueno y malo. Simplemente actúa por lo que ve, ¿no? Y por eso ahorita hay mucho, ¿cómo se le llama? Matar accidentalmente o intencionalmente en Estados Unidos. Los niños matan porque están siguiendo lo que ven en la televisión y todo eso.
So another question arises, well, we're all conscious, and human beings conscious. We commit some good activity, we get a good karma. We commit a bad activity, we get a bad karma. What about animals? They're conscious, and that dog just bit the heck out of me. Does he get a bad karma for biting me? Or that tiger ate the hunter, my God, you know, or the bull killed the matador, you know. I like that one. They call it an accident. What the hell do you mean an accident? You're trying to kill the bull. And the bull's fighting for his life, so he killed you. What do you mean? Accident. They're called bullfighting accidents. It's not an accident. You're trying to kill that animal, and that animal's fighting for survival, and guess what? He got you. You lose. You know, it's not an accident. You know? Anyway, do animals incur karma? And the answer is no. Because animals only act under. Animals don't break their their animal propensity. For example, mating. Animals mate in a mating season. They don't mate anytime. They're very structured. They don't eat any. Animals don't snack. They don't snack. They eat. You know, when they're full, they don't eat. And the next time they eat is when they are hungry. They don't snack. So they don't create karma. From the human being upwards, karma is created both good and bad, not the animals.
Entonces
Not below.
esto nos lleva a otra pregunta de, bueno, si tú haces un buen karma, vas a tener una buena cosa, si tienes mal karma, una reacción y así. Pero ¿qué hay de los animales? Que como el toro mata al matador, el tigre se come al cazador, que ahí generan un cierto karma. La respuesta es no, porque ellos actúan por instinto y ellos no rompen las leyes. Y de hecho ellos no se aparean a cada momento, ellos en cierta temporada. Y también ellos comen cuando tienen hambre, no están echándose antojitos o snacks cada momento.
Yeah. So lots of little informations there. Right down to childbirth. Twins, the birth of twins. Who's the oldest? Who's the youngest? Very detailed science of creation. When the human being enters the womb, that's their birth. That's where it starts. Right there, that day.
El nacimiento empieza cuando entra en el vientre la entidad. Ahí es cuando empieza. Pero ¿quién es más? Hay muchos detalles de ciencia porque están los gemelos y quién es más viejo. Hay muchos detalles de ciencia detrás de todo eso.
In the Indian culture, you're 9 months older than your birthday.
¿Cómo?
En la cultura hindú, tu edad es calculada 9 meses antes de tu fecha de nacimiento.
Lots of things there.
Muchas cosas ahí.
So some of those things we're not so interested in, but many of them are, yeah, it's interesting.
Muchas cosas estamos interesados y otras
Especially
cosas no.
if it has to do with life and life science, so-called life sciences, living things, very important.
Sobre todo en las cuestiones vivientes, en la cuestión de la ciencia de vida.
All right, so we'll continue now. What's the time?